but like all of you know,
No, it's still open. Remember, we kept it open, so we're going to continue the public hearing. Remember how we did that? Yeah, so we're going to just continue. We're going to read the piece and to continue the public hearing. Yeah, it's all right. I get it.
Ready?
Ready when you are, Mr. President.
Calling to order the regular meeting of the City Council, Monday, October 22nd, p.m. at the Council Chambers here at the Everett City Hall. Clerk will read the roll.
Counsel Capone.
Here.
Counsel De La Sola.
Here.
Counsel DeFlorio. Here. Counsel DePiero.
Here.
Counsel Hanlon.
Here.
Counsel Marchese.
Here.
Counsel Matusky. Here. Counsel McKinnon.
Here.
Counsel McLaughlin.
Here.
Counsel Simonelli.
Here.
And President Napolitano.
Here.
11 members present. Mr. President, you have a quorum.
You rise and salute the flag.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll get started. We have two public hearings that we'll start first. Clerk will read the item number one.
Item number one is an ordinance offered by Councilor Peter A. Napolitano as president. In accordance with the provisions of Section 12 of the zoning ordinances of the City of Everett, the City Council hereby amends the zoning ordinance as follows. Section 32, inclusionary zoning, that the affordable housing percentages be amended to encourage development.
Motion open.
So you're going to continue the public hearing that we had opened
Yep.
prior. So motion
Yes.
to continue the public hearing, to open it.
So
We have a motion to open to reopen the public hearing.
to
It's been
reopen and
seconded.
continue, or they'll be
Continue the
open?
public hearing from
Continue.
the...
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Can clerk give us an overview of what the
Sure.
planning board is presenting?
So the major change, let me get to the page. It would be under the affordable units. I mean, I think there were a few other amendments, but the main one would be under the amendment from a number of units at least equal to 10% of the units. Prior, we had where the total number of units is less than 13, at least 15% of the units, where the total number of units is 13 but less than 50, and at least 20% of the units where the total number of units is 50 or more. in a division of land or multiple unit development. That was stricken, and we're sticking with a number of units at least equal to 10% of the units in a development subject to this ordinance shall be established as affordable units in any one combination of methods provided for below affordable housing requirement. If there's someone here from the planning board, they could probably speak more in depth, but that is the main gist. But we do have the planner and the director of ISD here. If you'd
Councilman
like any more
DeFlorio?
information.
Motion to invite Mr. Soper and Tony Souza from Community Development.
We have a motion to invite Mr. Soper and Tony Souza from Development. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Councilman DeFlorio?
Thank you, Mr. President. In regards to this ordinance change, do you find that this has stopped the growth a little bit in the city?
Could you repeat that question, please?
That this has stopped the growth a little bit in the city, that people are not looking to contaminate the land anymore because of this formula that we had in place?
It's not only the contaminated land, it's the ability for these developers
Excuse
to
me, Mr.
make-
Soper, is your microphone on?
I believe so.
Could you please speak a little closer to the mic, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
It's the ability of developers to determine if they're able to make a profit, and they have to make a profit in order to do these developments. So the issue is this: it's not only the fact that the land is contaminated, which increases the cost of the developer, it's the 20% that we're adding as the number for affordable units that continue into perpetuity. So forever, these units are deeded, and the limitation on revenue on the project is there. So this is pushing developers out of our community and pushing them into other communities. And I'll give you a for instance.
Well, not to interrupt you, but I know Malden, Medford, Revere, they don't have any inclusionary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're pushing people to go to Revere, Malden, and Medford. So we are stopping the growth. And I said this when this came in front of us, that we were going to stop the growth. It took us 30 years to grow in the city of Everett. 30 years. And now that we're growing, we're telling the contractors that, hey, you got to give us so much. I am for affordable housing, by the way, because I'm up there in age myself. You know what I'm saying? And Social Security gives you this great. America's great. $1,200 a month. God bless the senior citizens that can live on $1,200 a month. So with the cost of living keeping going up, the taxes keep going up, we do need affordable housing. So you know what I say? Give the bill to City Hall. Give a bill to City Hall. Say make it all affordable housing. Do it a different way. Find out a different way, because people are in business to make money, not lose money. I don't see anybody in this room that would go to work for free. So I was against this to begin with, and I think this has to be changed. Especially with contaminated land. I think with contaminated land, you've got to go down even more. Leave it up to the board. Because to me, this is definitely stopping the growth. And I said this when this was put into effect.
So I can give you an example of what happened. The developer who did the backyard, Mr. Montelli, did a great job. We all seen that. He's currently developing the site where the Harley-Davidson is. He came to me 6 months ago after this went in, and he said that this gym is going to prevent me from doing any more business in this community.
Right.
I cannot afford it. I cannot afford it. So his next project is in Revere. It's not here in our great city of Everett. So we want to entice these good developers into our city, and we've just rezoned the commercial triangle for this. This would be part 2 to get commercial triangle off the ground. I invite my colleague as well.
If I may, Tony Souza, Planning Director, in essence, in a nutshell, the Planning Board recommends recommends this change for passage. To be clear, originally within the provisions of inclusionary zoning that we passed, it was recommended 50 units or more at 20%. This change here looks at 6 units or more at 10%. It is a reduction, but here's also the situation. On paper, 20% looks great. In practice, we haven't seen projects take hold at the 20% threshold. Looking around, generally speaking, not all locations in Greater Boston, but generally speaking, those that do have inclusionary zoning tend to hover around 10%. Furthermore, in here, the planning board thought it would be important to have a provision where if you're spending money to clean up a site that's registered with what we call AUL, activity use limitation, that you also be able to get a reduction of up to 5%. And in turn, the goal is to help incentivize developments from taking place. Here's another important point. Within the past year, large-scale developments, prior to the Harley-Davidson site, developers have sought out through their own rights to get freezes from inclusionary zoning. At this 20% threshold, we've seen 0 affordable units. Going back at the end of the day, why we introduced this provision of inclusionary zoning and why we're recommending these changes as it's been proposed from the planning board is so we can get towards our requirement to meet 10% affordable. We're not there yet, believe it or not. We're at roughly 6%, and we can't necessarily get there so easily with a higher threshold. Again, on paper, 20% is great, A+. In practice, we haven't been able to get there.
But what good if you have 20% and you're getting nothing? You could have 40% and get nothing. You're getting nothing out of it. It's 0. You're getting 0. You're not getting affordable housing. So isn't it better that you go with a little less and get something? I mean, it's proven. We have literally stopped the growth in the city after all these years. All right, so...
Thank you, Counselor. Okay. I do want to remind the speakers that are coming up, the city council member at a regular meeting are restricted to a 5-minute rule. They do get a second round to be able to come up and talk. So again, we do respect your answers and will not cut you off in your explanations. But the longer your explanation, if it includes unwarranted information, it prohibits the councilman from being able to ask follow-up questions to your answer. Okay. Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, when this first came, this ordinance came before us, 20% seemed reasonable, but since we did vote on that, different developments have come to my attention. One being the Mark's Discount Building. The gentleman that owned that property had intentions of putting apartments or condos there, and clean it all up, tear it down, and put a brand-new building that would really improve that neighborhood. But the problem is this 20%, am I right, Mr. Inspector?
That's correct.
This 20% prevented him from doing that. It wasn't financially feasible for him to do that. So I agreed to reduce to 10%. So now what we have there, he sold the property to a storage facility. And we know what that monster building further up on the Parkway is now. And I wouldn't want that in my backyard either. But we have the Market Forge property that's vacant and it's contaminated, I'm pretty sure. Yes. And, you know, all that property and that whole, you know, unfortunately, there was all kind of industry at one time, and the same thing down the line for the casino area. But I am in favor, if this is going to help developers to come into this city, in the Patch Yard, we all can see what a beautiful project that is. And the Harley-Davidson site seems like a beautiful project also. It's a great location. Everett's a good place to live. So I've been, you know, like I said, I live right near this area. So I'm going to vote in favor of this reduction to 10% so that we can see some more development. And I think overall, you know, everybody, I know the rents are skyrocketing, but 10% is, if you're building 100 units, 10%, 10 apartments would go to low income. I think that's a fair equation. So I want to thank you both for being here this evening. I'm going to vote to reduce this to 10%. 10% is what you're asking for, am I right? Other planning board?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Council McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to also ask one of the questions Councilman Matusky asked. So this goes to 10% across the board, or what is the ratio breakdown currently versus what the new ratio breakdown will be? If you can just give a quick synopsis of that.
So I'll leave that up to Director Souza.
Currently, 6 to 13 is at 10%, 13 to 49 is at 15, and then 50-plus units is at 20%. Correct.
So I think this is something that Councilman Matusky hit on also, but we hear every day from residents that are being driven out of the city, unfortunately, that need to have affordable housing to stay here, and long-term residents in the city of Everett. We have seen a makeup of the city change in the last 5 years. We don't need to build 2- and 3-bedroom units any longer. We need small unit developments that are smart growth developments to keep people in this community. I think this is a great way to be able to do that. I think it brings smart growth development into our community. We hear monthly at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting these types of conversations coming up, and continue to be asked, when will zoning change? I think this is a good step in the right direction to be able to start this process tonight. And for the reasons that Councilman Matusky said not to relate them, I will be supporting this because I think it's the right step, first right step, to be able to bring smart growth development into our community that don't overburden our schools and brings the right developments into our community.
Thank you. Councilman Marchese.
Yes, quick question. You said that, was it Montelio, who's the guy who developed the backyard in the Harley Davidson?
Andy Montelli.
Montelio, you said he's going to Revere?
Guy's building now in Revere.
What-
No longer looking for property in the city of Everett.
Because that was what, 20%?
Yes,
Okay, so what, we're here looking at the 10% number, that's what we're looking at.
yes.
What is the breakdown on the property where the wood waste is? What is being built at wood waste?
So right now, 545 residential units, standalone parking garage, and about 14,000 square feet of commercial.
And what will be, that's the 10%, that 10% or 20% as of now?
That project has been permitted prior to the requirement for the inclusionary zoning, so it is exempt. However, the developer agreed on his own to put 3% inclusionary zoning, workforce affordable housing on his own.
So it's 3% total there?
Right.
Or 13?
On the mayor's encouragement.
Yep. All right, so we got 545 in the parking, park garage is sufficient for how many cars?
I'm going to say it's about 190 cars. There were variances given for
Yeah.
the number of parking spaces, but I think they're down to about 1.4, 1.5 spaces per unit. Again, it's less than 1,000 feet from the new Silver Line,
Yep.
so this is walking distance to the new Silver Line.
Okay, so what we're saying is, actually, we have less than, so we have, our new ordinances, I believe, said a half a parking spot per unit. Is that what the new zoning was down there, half?
Under the commercial triangle, the
Yes.
half a parking space per unit was limited to studio apartments.
Limited to studio?
Correct.
So, okay.
Correct.
Excuse me 1 second.
Sure.
Thank you.
Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to our guests. The state law is 10%, right? So what we're doing is we're asking to amend this ordinance to be in compliance with state law. The intent of the amendments when they were made was to catch up on our deficit. You mentioned that we're at 6% affordability. I'd say we're probably a little bit lower than that with all the new development we had, probably closer to 4%, which means we're 6% below the state requirement. So if you could explain to this body what it means if you're below the 10%, what can happen if a developer that comes in
Sure.
and decides they want to establish a property?
Sure. So in essence, because we're not at a required 10% by the state mandate, a developer could come in and propose a 40B development, which would go through the Zoning Board of Appeals. A 40B development could be anywhere 25% plus affordable
Well, they don't
units.
actually have to do anything. They can go anywhere they want.
I was just going to explain that.
Yeah.
So in essence, they could easily override the local authorities, in this case, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and in essence petition the state, again, because the city is not at its 10%. If I may, to your points earlier, thinking
Well,
about...
I'm just going to cut you off for a second.
Sure.
The only reason being is we've got this 5-minute rule, and there's just a couple of points that I need to get some information from you on, and then I'd be more than happy to hear anything else that you have to say. Staying on the line of the 10%, we just talked about the Woodway site, there's 545 units that are being built. And so 10% of that state law requirement would be 54 units, right? So the developer, on their own, decided to do 3%.
Counselor, the point of state law is 10% of all units built in the community.
Right.
The inclusionary zoning, some communities have it at 10, some have it
Right.
at 20. So I just want to be clear, with all respect, when you
Yeah,
mention
what my concern
the
is,
state law.
well, this is my concern. My concern is it's 10% of what you have in your community. So as you bring in more units, you're 10%. If you're bringing in a development that does less than 10%, what you've just done is you've taken the burden off of the developer, and you've placed that burden on the rest of the community. That's what's happened, because the community at large has to have 10%. So we have a 545-unit building that goes in, and instead of holding their end of the bargain, which would be 10%, they do 3%. So good for that developer. They make a little more profit. Bad for the rest of the people who live in the city. Second thing, the backyard units. How many units are in that building, and how many of those are affordable units?
You're about 380?
So there's about 380 units.
And how many of those are affordable?
No.
Zero.
No
Okay.
units.
So there's 38 more units that get shouldered by the rest of the community. How about the Harley project? How many units are going in there?
Zero, because they exercise their zoning freeze, which they're allowed by statute.
All right, so how many units are going to be in the building, though? Zero?
Total number of units there? No, not zero.
279.
Okay, 279. And there's not going to be any affordable housing there?
No.
Okay. And then on Broadway, we just built how many units? 14, no parking?
Well, they haven't been built yet.
It's going to be. How many units is that going to be?
That's 18 units.
18 units, no parking. How many of those are affordable?
At this point, there was no freeze for that project, so.
Sure.
Depending, it could be 3
2 to 3 units, perhaps, 3 to 4.
And that's, okay, so the reality is, there's all this growth that's happened, and we're talking about affordable housing for the community, yet all of these developments that came in aren't creating any more affordable housing. So when we sit up here and we talk about how we need to have affordability, it isn't happening right now. Now, under this amendment change, what's going to happen is we're going to make developers hold tight with the state guideline. We're not going to gain any ground whatsoever on our past deficiency, which leaves this city exposed to potential 40B development down the road. May or may not ever happen, but we remain exposed because we don't step up our efforts. There's a couple of pieces in the ordinance I want to ask about. The very first part, the preamble, most of this is the same as what's in the existing ordinance. There's some changes of numbers and paragraphs, but it's pretty much the same language. The very beginning talks about this change being put in place for 5 years from the date of adoption until amended or until extended, and then it's going to revert back to the current process. So what's the gain of the 5 years? Who benefits from the 5 years?
The idea of the sunset provision would be, in essence, an experiment, if you will, to see, in fact, how the dynamics go in the housing market. And we've looked at including sunset provisions in other ordinances as well. So that's the intention to it.
Okay. And then the last question I have for you is, on the section that's labeled provisions applicable to affordable units on and off, that's paragraph 6, subpart D, there's a little chart in there. And I noticed that this chart is different than what's existing on the books. The very last one, where it says affordable unit percentage required, up to 90%, it says 10%. The existing one on the book says 100%. One of those is clearly a typo. I'm not sure which one is. Do you see where I'm talking about on that page?
We have a motion to have the mayor before us, been second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
One of those is a typo. I don't know which one it is.
Just give me a moment here.
Do you see where it is?
So this is regarding timing of construction, and as it relates to the percentage of the market rate being built and the percentage of the affordable units being built. In essence, in a nutshell, this is to regulate that and think of large-scale projects, as market rate units are being built in, we want to ensure that the affordable units are being built in at the same time, if you will, or at a certain rate, so as developers aren't simply building all the market rate first under, let's say, a phase 1 and phase 2, put all the affordables, and in fact, the best way we think to hold developers for building the affordable is to include some type of regulation, and in essence, that's what that is. So that's why you see the 90% at market rate. They must have 100% of the affordable units built by that time.
Okay, my question
Councilman?
is that number next there, it says 10%, but the current one on the book, I think, says 100%. So one of them is a typo, I just don't know which one is it.
I will gladly look at it more closely. You're talking with respect to up to 90%?
Yeah, where it says up to 90%, the
'Cause
number that corresponds to that says 10%. I think that the ordinance, the way it's written, it may very well be a typo, it says 100%.
That's the new one. So what I'm showing here in the new version is up to 90% under market rate, and the affordable housing units percent required is 100%. So they're
All right, thank you. I don't have any other
Councilman.
questions.
Councilman McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. President, to our invited
Can I just
guest.
address a couple comments? If I could.
Good. Why not? I'll give you.
Thank you, Councilman McKinnon. I just wanted to, I know it seems like there was a push from the council regarding that the city has not done a good enough job providing affordable housing. But if you do recall what the backyard looked like for, I think, the 14 years I was in the city council, it was a blighted, empty, dirty building. I know we all forget, right? That's how a lot of people, when it comes to politics, some people sometimes forget. But that building was blighted, empty, people doing things inside that building that you wouldn't want in your neighborhood. We worked tirelessly to get that to be developed and get redeveloped and cleaned up. You also remember now the development that wood waste what's happening there. Right now, we had a facility that was just poisoning our neighborhoods with smells and contaminants and pollutants. And now you have someone who's taking this contaminated property and building housing and 14,000 square foot of commercial space with lighting and trees and landscaping. You know, we all want affordable housing. We all want workforce housing. We can obtain that, and we're going to obtain that on our major streets here in the city of Everett, just by doing some zoning changes that we're going to work on. But to get the housing that you want to do, housing like Parkway Heights on Route 16, I don't think we want that type of housing in the city of Everett. What the Backyard does, the Pioneer is doing, what Tebow is doing down at Wood Waste, those are housing developments we can be proud of, with little impact on our schools, very little impact. So let's not just tear down everything we've done here. We are trying our hardest to do workforce housing, to get affordable housing in the city of Everett. You know, I'm sitting here watching the meeting, and I didn't appreciate some of the comments that we made. We're working diligently to make the city a better place. We understand that people are being forced out of the community because rents are skyrocketing. That is because supply and demand, people. There's a demand for housing, and there's a very little, small amount of supply of housing. We need to create more housing. To create more housing, then you draw down prices for real estate. When you have a lot of housing on the market, rents go down. That's how you create affordable housing. To create affordable housing, you build a reliable transportation system, getting people to and from the city of Boston, from the city of Everett. You allow people to build 18 units on Broadway, allow them to go up 6 stories, okay? Don't give them the permits to build 3 bedrooms, maybe 1 bedroom, studio bedrooms, okay? So now they have the right to build without parking. You don't want them bringing cars into your city to clog the streets up. It's like renting a home. When the home says no dogs allowed, you don't rent with a dog. Same thing, when you rent a unit with no permits for cars, you cannot get a permit for your car, you can't rent the hop of your car. That's how you prevent traffic from coming to your neighborhoods. But to provide affordable housing, you give them density. That's what we're doing. Allowing more housing, get more stock on the market, so you have more people, so you have more units to put out there, right? So it's supply and demand. Just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fine. Councilman Kennon, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to our invited guests. Mr. Soper, in your professional opinion, is this something that the city should be doing? And also, how will it impact our citizens in Everett?
Without a doubt, this community should be taking advantage of the current building market, especially in the situation on the commercial triangle section of this community. We have contaminated land that is very costly to clean, as we talked about. We need to be able to entice developers into that land to consolidate properties, combine them, and build multi-dwelling units with commercial space on the first floor. This is the vision of the mayor. This should be the vision of the community. This will not weigh on our school system. We're talking about...
Or any city services, not just schools, any city services.
This is right in the vicinity of the new Silver Line. The mayor is trying to get a Silver Line stop right over there. So this is virtually walk out your front door, be in your own little neighborhood village in that area, use
Sort
the
of like
commercial
Melrose.
retail spaces.
Sort of like a Melrose type.
Exactly.
Okay. Mr. Souza, same questions to you.
Simple answer, I echo the same thing that
With,
just stated.
with one twist. We're at 6% now. How do we get to the 10% by doing this?
A little bit longer of an answer.
Well, yeah, yeah.
It's a multi-pronged approach. But if I may, here we are
Absolutely.
in a situation where at the standard of 20%, we've gotten 0. And as we 20% of 0 is 0. It's incremental progress. This 6% threshold didn't happen overnight. And it's going to take through a combination of programs, of services, our housing rehab program, inclusionary zoning. This is monumental just in the last 2 years, the adoption of this. Many communities have this in the books for decades, thereby being able to get to their 10%. But likewise, an important thing that the mayor, we have all been working on, is also working with the affordable housing developers, those that are not only here in Everett, but within our region, and trying to entice them through other programs, through other incentive programs to build more affordable housing. Take, for example, St. Teresa's. It's the largest affordable housing development through the neighborhood developers, and they're doing that here in Everett.
What % is that?
So that's all affordable.
Okay.
Yes.
So that should bring us up?
Well, that will help. And again, it's not overnight. It's not overnight, but we have to be making incremental progress. Absolutely. And indeed, it is math. The more market units that come on board. But remember, for decades, we've had units being built throughout the history of the city at 0, right? Inclusionary zoning is a step in the right direction. Adjusting it, do believe that it is a step in the right direction as well, because we're just not getting there with the 20% threshold.
Thank you. Thank you both on that. Do you want to add anything, Mr. Mayor, while I still have a couple of seconds here?
No.
Okay.
I do, but
Well, it'll take more than
Yeah,
a couple
couple
seconds.
hours.
All right. I'm all set.
Councilman DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was actually going to ask you about St. Teresa's, about those are all low income. And to me, I think eventually, let's give a bill to City Hall. Tell them we'll give it to him, do all low income. Do a 66 Main Street at City Hall right here. There's a lot we can do,
yeah,
okay?
there is.
Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited funds right now, but the future will bring the funds. I'm sure of that. So the other question I have is, if you leave it at 10%, I believe if anybody has like a use of limitation, I think the board should be able to go down to 5%. So I would actually like to amend number 4, section E. And I put that in the form of a motion to amend it. Well, I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. So I want the clerk, I want to question, this is what I want to do, but I want the clerk to also write it down. So it says 5% reduction in the number of affordable units required under this ordinance. That's 5% for everybody. So if we add, and for any site which has a recorded activity, in other words, the land has to be recorded that it was only used for junkyards, for example, okay? And use limitation, a reduction of additional 5% shall be automatic. So it depends on what you consider land that's contaminated. I mean, just if you drop a can of oil in my driveway, yeah, it's contaminated, but not enough to give me 5%. Now, if you go down to a site where they were selling oil and the whole yard is contaminated, that should be allowed. You understand what I'm saying?
If there's an AUL on the property.
Right, thank you. So that's what I would like to add to that section E, if that's okay. How do you feel about that?
So that was, there was a recommendation from the planning board where they said up to 5%. And in further conversations, having a fixed number, I agree, is a good idea. It helps everyone, not only from an administrative end, from our end, but also from developers to know firsthand exactly what their pro forma will be. So it's not a gray area. And to the point of remediation of sites and the reduction, we do have many sites, well over a dozen, that could be prime sites for redevelopment for housing. And indeed, the level of remediation can be a deterrent, right? Can stop people from making such investments. And the key one is over at Commercial Triangle Market Forge. But there are other sites in the city as well. An important thing, again, the AUL is something that is registered, right? That is through Mass DEP. So this is just not solely
Yeah, you just can't
a
have a
local
contract
thing.
come up here and say,
No.
I have contaminated land. They have to
No,
show us
there's-
something that's
right,
contaminated.
right,
So,
I-
yeah,
So full concurrence.
so is that okay to add that to section E?
Yes, in my opinion.
Mine
Mr.
as well.
Soba?
Mine as well.
Okay.
The way we create affordable housing is by creating more units, creating smaller units in the city. You know, what Mr. Antonelli is doing on Broadway, he by right could have built a podium-style building with 28 parking spots in the back of the building. Instead, he's doing retail in front, building smaller units, and doing landscape amenities to the property, and is not taking any permits for any vehicles. No vehicles can park there. So if we can create more units, like on the second and third stories of some of these buildings on Broadway, on Ferry Street, Chelsea Street, Hancock, build more units, smaller units, no parking spaces, by creating more housing stock, by again, creating that good, solid, transportation system, you will put more units on the market, no vehicles, and create basic workforce housing by just doing that.
I believe in affordable houses, don't get me wrong. And I mean, everything is way
Right,
too
the other
high.
thing,
The cost of living goes up, doesn't go
Well,
up.
taxes go
It's-
up, when you expend,
Right,
rents
ta-
go up.
Right.
Landlords pass it on to their property owners.
Right, but they have to also cover their expenses, and we understand
Right.
that. So we just have to find a different way to do it. Because this isn't working. We're getting zero. Just remember, board, 20%, we're getting zero. So we're still not getting affordable housing.
Right.
So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to excuse the customary thanks.
Thank you
All in
very much.
favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. We have an open motion to open public hearing. I'm going to ask 3 times. Anyone in favor of
No, after.
this ordinance? Okay. Is anyone in favor of this ordinance? Second time. Is anyone in favor of this ordinance? Third time. Is anyone in favor of this ordinance? Close that section of the meeting. Is anyone opposed to this ordinance? Is anyone opposed to this ordinance? Third time, is anyone opposed to this ordinance? There's none. Close that section of the hearing.
Favorable action, and I would like to make an amendment on number 4, section E.
Just for the record, if you could restate the,
I will. I'm waiting for the clerk to be ready.
yep,
You
he's all
ready?
set.
So at the end, it says units required under this ordinance.
Yep.
Right after this ordinance, and for any site which has a recorded activity in use limitation, a reduction of an additional 5% shall be automatic.
I got after recorded activity, then I need the rest. I don't write that fast.
Recorded activity in
Yep.
use limitation,
Yep,
a reduction of an additional 5% shall be automatic.
Okay, I get it, thank you.
We have a second for the amendment to the, on the amendment.
On the amendment, we have a second on the amendment.
Yes, on the amendment, Councilman Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate what my colleague is trying to do, and I do think that if you're dealing with environmental remediation or flood zones, there should be discretion. I hesitate to make it automatic, though. The reason being is you're taking that discretion out of our planning board members who, are going to be dealing with that particular piece, whatever it is, and projects change from project to project. And I think to automatically make a 5% reduction, I think that we might be doing a disservice. I have no problem with the language that's inserted here about it being discretionary, but I would ask that we leave it discretionary with the planning board. And that way, if it's warranted, they can absolutely allow it. But if they don't, if we make it automatic, there's nothing to say about it. It's done. It's a done deal. So I would ask that we do not amend it to make it automatic.
Anyone else speaking on this? Okay, we have a motion, right now, we have a motion to amend the item to include the language that Councilman DeFlorio had included. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. So we have a motion now,
Favorable action on the ordinance? On the
as amended.
As amended.
Second, on the piece, on the motion, rather.
Yep.
Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. My concern is, we're talking about affordable housing. Everybody here wants affordable housing. The statute, the way it's being proposed to us, is not helping affordable housing. What it's doing is it's actually maintaining the status quo. It's setting things up at 10%. So the way the current statute reads, it reads that projects that are over 50 would go to 20%. Well, as we've heard, maybe 20% is too high. But by locking it in at 10%, which is the state law, we're doing nothing more as a community to shoulder our burden under state law. We're remaining in violation of state law. So what I would ask for a motion would be that we amend it so that any development that has 10 units or less remains at the state law, which is 10%. Anything above that number is 15%. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us a little bit of an ability to try to gain some of the affordable housing in the community. We're still not going to get there. It's going to take us 50 years to get there. But the reality is, with the 40B violation, if you show the Commonwealth that you're trying to comply with that statute, a 40B developer cannot come wherever they want. So by actually graduating the amount that we're looking for, we're actually showing good faith. And that way, we protect the integrity of our neighborhoods, we protect our zoning laws, because otherwise, if we stay under the 10%, our zoning laws, the integrity of our neighborhoods, they're all out the window, because a developer can come in and do anything they want. So I'm making a motion that we amend that section so that units of 10 or less are 10%, and anything 11 or more are 15%.
Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilwoman DeFlorio made a very good suggestion. These developed, nothing has happened with the 20%, according to our Director of Buildings in the city. Nothing on the Parkway. Okay, and they have to clean that it costs $72 million to clean up the casino site. That's just where the casino is. That doesn't include all that other poison property down there. And it makes sense that a developer has to pay to clean. I can imagine what it's going to cost to clean up Market Forge. But anyway, we need affordable housing. There's no question. I get calls, 1 or 2 calls a week from people seeking housing. We need to build a building like Glendale Towers. We need another Whittier Drive. We need another Golden Age Circle. We don't have enough. If it wasn't for Mr. Sacro with the old vocational school, I don't know where some of these senior citizens would be living in this city. We need affordable senior citizens housing in this community. It's really depleted. I'm going to vote for the Councilwoman DeFlorio's 5%, which is very reasonable, on contaminated property. What's that referred to as? 10%. It makes sense to me. We have to have development. We've got guys, developers moving to Revere. I can imagine what that Minuteman would have built over there with a check cash, and it's a mess over there. It's been a mess for years. And hopefully, maybe at some point, these scrap metal businesses will take a hike. And then we got something really good going on. So I'm going to vote for this. Makes sense. It's state law. We went above the, nothing's happened. We get the St. Teresa's property being developed, which I'm very happy to hear, that's going to be affordable. A lot of studio, and there's a project on Ferry Street across from Walgreens. Those are all going to be studios. That means that now I hope that's moving forward. If it's good enough for the guy on Broadway, I don't see why it wouldn't be good enough for that man. So we've got to move forward here. You know, we're in the Stone Age a little bit. We've got to think outside of, people want to live here, people want to stay here, people I know, but they can't afford it. They want lower studio type of apartments. So I'm going to vote for this, and hopefully the other members will too. Thank you.
Okay, right now, there's a motion for an amendment. There's no second on it. Seeing as there's no second,
Table action on the order.
it's
On the
already been...
piece.
Come again?
On the piece. I want to speak on the piece.
On the motion, on the piece?
Yep, for favorable action. Thank you, Mr.
You
President.
couldn't speak more than 2 times.
You can speak, if I could, through the chair. What happens is every single piece that comes before the body, as you well know, as our president, is a separate action. And each individual can speak on a separate action as a new piece. Thank you. The reality here is we keep talking in circles. We keep talking about wanting affordable housing, but yet we're voting against affordable housing. What we're doing is we're maintaining the status quo at best. You don't see any development. You don't see any places coming. I see development everywhere. As a matter of fact, and I'm not against growth. Growth is good. Uncontrolled growth is bad. And I would suggest to you that's what we have going on in this community right now. Our infrastructure cannot handle it. Our school department cannot handle it. We are being presented fantasy ideas that people are going to move into properties and not own a vehicle. I don't think that's realistic. We're told they're going to be studio apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, because we all know people don't move families into 1-bedroom or studio apartments. There won't be any children in there. They won't be adding to the school department's burden. They're already busting at the seams, and we just keep adding to it. The problem is you've got all this other development that's happened, and these folks haven't had to have any affordable housing. These developers are coming in, if they're going to be putting affordable housing in, or if they're building in our community, they're not coming here as charity. They're not building in this city because they're Santa Claus. They're building in the city to make a profit. And they're making a profit at the expense of the residents of this community. And it's our responsibility as elected officials to make sure that whatever development comes into this community isn't going to further strap us. If you're going to have a situation where you tell a developer, come on in, yeah, maybe you have to maintain the state guideline. Oh, thank you. We're going to require a developer to comply with state law. You know, I don't get it. I don't understand. We've got at least 5 or 6% below where we need to be. This statute does nothing to protect this community. If it's voted as it stands right now without increasing larger units to something above 10%, we're maintaining the status quo. We are leaving this community wide open to a 40B development where they can take our zoning laws and our neighborhood structure, push it right out the window, and build wherever they please. That's my concern. So that's why I was hoping that we can come off to 20, that's fine. But 15%, I think, is a compromise. It's a little bit of an advance above the state statute, but what it's going to do is it does 2 things. One, it shows good faith, so we protect the integrity of our neighborhoods in this community. And the second thing that it does is it actually gets us a little closer to getting to the target. If we accept this the way it is, we are maintaining the status quo we go nowhere, and we leave our residents at risk. And you want to talk about affordable housing and all that, people are all leaving because they can't afford it. You want affordable housing, you want to trickle down the expense, lower your tax rate. That's how you do it. But that means cutting spending.
Councilman McKinnon.
There's been a lot of debate back and forth on this issue, and Councilman from Ward 1 raises great issue. And I want to see if I could have one of the gentlemen come back up before us, just so they could actually have a chance to see, or I'd like to see, what comments they have on my colleague from Ward 1's comments. Can we do that? We're on the motion.
Call for the question,
You're
Mr.
asking,
President.
the motion is the amendment, so yeah, the amendment is the 5%, so I would say yes. You're allowed to ask questions, because it's in regards to the 5%.
I have questions. The administration on this.
So what they're doing, table action as amended, right?
It's just, it's favorable action.
Which is amendment, you know what I mean, so the discussion.
I want a question
Because
answered.
it's on the amendment, does that make sense?
I do, I want a question.
All right, Councilman McKinnon, who would you like to come up?
Mr. Souza.
I think that's valid because it's on that specific amendment, and that's what we're taking, right? Right, but I'm saying, yeah, the amendment.
Mr. Souza, through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Souza. There's been a lot of dialogue back and forth. Could you comment on the dialogue that was just presented before us?
Sure. So really simple, in a nutshell, the planning board made a recommendation. These, in essence, it's the planning board's recommendation with the further amendment about the 5%. I would respectfully, ask that the planning board favorably consider the planning board's recommendation with the further amendment. 10% with the 5% reduction for those at AUL sites.
And
That's in
how
essence.
does this play into state law? Are we going to be handcuffed here?
Well, if I may, we have to be making incremental progress. And what we said earlier, at 20%, there's been 0 units. By a reduction, the goal is to create some more units through incentive here. And if we can be making some incremental progress, we're going in the right direction. At the current state, at 20%, we're not even making incremental progress.
So if we lower it down to the 10% plus the 5% that we're trying to do now by the amendment?
Sticking with the planning board's recommendation, planning board also recommended a reduction up to 5%. And to the point raised earlier, with respect to the planning board and giving them the discretion, likewise with respect to the planning board, they did recommend twice already. First time when IZ came before us, and this time, to keep it at 10%.
And also, there was mention of the schools busting at the seams and stuff like that with single apartments that are actually being produced now with no parking and different restrictions on those. How is that going to help that scenario that was mentioned by my colleague from Ward 1?
Generally speaking, the cost of parking is tied into development costs. And when you have access to BRT, bus rapid transit, when we're doing all these infrastructure improvements, roadway, other projects we talked about earlier, almost direct access to the Silver Line in Chelsea. In fact, from a planning bubble, we do believe that there should be incentives in place. In essence, what do I mean by that? Reductions in parking to support further developments.
Has there been a study on this?
There's been studies on it. It is best practice as well.
Thank you. No further questions from me, anyway.
Okay. Give you a lot of latitude, Councilman.
Mr. President, with all due respect, if a guest comes up, I have the opportunity to ask him a question.
Proceed. Keep it brief.
Thank you, Mr. President. The question I have for you is that we're talking about incremental gain. That's where we're all trying to get.
Correct.
And I'll concede to you that the 20% was too much. Clearly, it's not going to be profitable for a developer to come in and do the 20%. It's not going to happen, okay? But if we keep this as it's amended right now, we're at 10%. State law is at 10%. Where's the incremental gain? We gain from the 4, 5, 6%, but we're treading water. We're not actually increasing. What is your personal opinion with regards to setting it up in such a way that the number of units, whatever the number happens to be, 10, 15, 20, 25, stays at 10%, which is the state law. But then a large-scale development, like we've seen, 500 and some odd units, something like that maybe gets bounced up to 15%, or some percentage increment. Every 10 more units is another percentage. Because that really is truly gaining in terms of the number. I mean, if we pass this in here at 10%, we're treading water. We're not really gaining. You have to go above the 10% to actually make an impact. Wouldn't you agree?
Let's talk about the history of the housing inventory in Everett. We didn't have inclusionary zoning. It was only through this administration that it was adopted.
Well, actually, if I could stop you there, I actually talked with your predecessor about inclusionary zoning, and I was told, don't worry about it, the administration's working on it, we've got it going. Years went by. You took over, I spoke to you about it. Administration's working on it. And I'm sure they were, and it's great, and it came out, and we had something in place. But the reality is, in that time frame, when there was a delay, there were a ton of developments that went up. So somebody benefited from it.
Counselor, the opportunity for adoption of inclusionary zoning goes back decades.
I know it does.
So through this administration, the adoption of inclusionary zoning is a monumental success in the movement for creating more affordable units. The list of affordable units through the history, and goes back several decades, without the adoption of inclusionary zoning, if only we had inclusionary zoning in place years and years back, prior to with all respect, prior to this administration, prior to the council, we would have been in a much better position.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so here we are, and it's, in essence, again, in paper, 20% is great. In practice, it's not working. To the question of 15 versus 10, I respectfully do take the planning board's recommendation at the 10%. It's more of an art than a science, but if you don't have anything in place, there's no way that you can even make incremental progress.
Right.
And the 10% with respect to state law is a requirement amongst all communities. It doesn't, not to confuse this, it doesn't mean that the inclusionary zoning, some communities have IZ, some inclusionary zoning, some communities do not. Some have them at 15, some of them have them at 10, and others at different ratios.
Right.
So I really don't want to blur the two, and just want to make that clear, that yes, there's a state mandate for 10% of all market rate units, but the inclusionary zoning rate itself can vary.
Yeah, and that's true. But what I'm saying is if we adopt 10%, which is the state law, how do we gain?
Mr.
Counselor-
Soper, first of all, you were excused the customary thanks. You were not invited back up. Okay, if a member would like to invite you back up, be more than happy to hear your comments, but I cannot allow you to speak unless you've been invited.
Make a motion on the,
Council McLaughlin?
make a motion that we invite up Building Inspector Soper. to-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Just want to keep it official.
Thank
By
you.
all means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to say a little bit about the 40B in the community, and we are not a target 40B community. We don't have developers coming in here knocking down our doors. They come to both Mr. Souza and our office first. There is no market for it here. First off, contaminated property, too much to take care of. Property values itself, too high for these things to work, okay? They work in certain situations, existing properties, perhaps, but I think what I'd like to do, if the council would have it, is to bring up counsel from Coltman and Page, Jonathan Silverstein. He's an expert on this and can give us some great advice.
Gentlemen, if I could make a suggestion, if this is going to be on extended and having additional speakers, you might want to refer this to committee.
Mr. President, the question's been asked, with all due
There's
respect.
a motion on the table. We
There's a
have
motion on the
second.
table, it was seconded.
I'm ready
Let's
to
have a
vote.
roll
All right,
call
we're ready to
vote
vote.
and move forward here.
All right.
We have
We keep
a lot of
bouncing
people
things
in this
around
chamber
like
tonight.
us.
I'd like to excuse the guests with the customary thanks, call for the question, and have a vote on this issue.
We have a motion to excuse the customary thanks, been second. All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion before you, as amended, favorable
as
action.
amended.
Clerk will read the roll.
Favorable action as amended. This is for enrollment. Counselor Capone.
No.
Counselor Della Sola.
Yes.
Counselor DeFlorio.
Yes.
Counselor DePiero.
Yes.
Counselor Hanlon.
No.
Counselor Marchese. Counselor Matusky.
Yes.
Counselor McKinnon.
Yes.
Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Simonelli.
No.
And President Napolitano.
No.
You have 5 yeas, 4 nays. You have failed. The order has failed. The ordinance has failed.
Clerk will read item number 2.
Item number 2 is a public hearing offered by Councilor Peter A. Napolitano as president. Verizon New England, Inc. and National Grid be granted permission by the city council to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Ferry Street. National Grid to install PVC conduits to the property at 110 through 124 Ferry Street. National Grid also doing all sidewalk restoration.
Okay, can we have someone from National Grid before us, please? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Would you please state your name for the record, please?
Either way, it failed.
Councilors, my name is Mike Cordino from National Grid Electric, 170.
There's a quorum. Excuse me 1 second. There's a question of a quorum. There is a quorum. We're only missing 1 member.
It was
Mr. President,
6-4, but it still
before we
failed.
proceed,
Clerk will clarify the vote on the last item, please.
6-4, but you need 8 for a zoning amendment. Still failed.
6-4, all right. So there was 10 members here, so it was 6.
Yep, 6-4, but it failed.
Please, if you could reintroduce, if you could.
Sure. My name is Mike Cordima from National Grid Electric at 170 Medford Street, Malden. We're filing this petition for the customer at 124 Ferry Street on their behalf so that they can install 2 4-inch conduits so that we can upgrade their power to the property.
Councilman Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you submit a plan with that coming to the city?
Just this petition sketch, sir.
Yes, Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would like to request that we table this until everybody has a plan of that. I just read the plan that we just put forth a couple of weeks ago about 4 places, and if I had the plan, I would never have voted for it. So I want to see the plan before we submit any more. So that's why I was asking for it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to hold this over till the next meeting?
On the motion, can I
And the
speak?
plan to be submitted to us.
So the plan can be submitted to individuals, to the members. Councilman Marchese, on the question.
Yes, could I ask a gentleman one question? Is this the building that's being rehabbed?
Yes, sir.
Now, this building's been, I don't know about you people, I've been driving by this place for the last 40 years. It's a dump. It's probably starting to look nice. I mean, I don't want to delay anything to these people in development. I don't know what the plan is, but are you looking to put a pole? What's the,
We submitted this drawing. It's a petition sketch, and it shows that we're requesting 2 4-inch conduits about 40-odd feet down the sidewalk onto the property so that the customer, we can improve their electric service.
and how many units are you going to have there?
To the best of my knowledge, talking to the owners, and they're here tonight,
Yep.
it's going to be around 14.
14? I mean, I wish we could take a look at this thing tonight and move this thing forward. They're moving down there. I want to see this place, it'll be a big improvement to the Ferry Street area when this place is done. You're over here where the property is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that big an issue to find out what they're going to do? I mean, take a look at it before we delay these people. I mean, I just want to see the project go forward. It's starting to take shape. I'd like to see something happen there.
Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to our guest, the clerk just provided us with a copy of the plan that you have in your hands. And if you could, on that plan, how many poles in total are we talking about?
Sir, that's just language, but it's no poles. It's only 2 4-inch conduits.
It's right there. It's on
Yes,
the
from our manhole onto the property.
corner of High and Ferry. That's where that is?
That's correct.
That's
Yep.
all it is?
That's it.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, Mr.
Councilman
Chairman-
Matusky.
Mr. Chairman, neither do I. This plan says it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Exactly what it is.
I agree with Councilman Marchese. This building, they did the front of it over.
Mr. Chairman, don't I have the floor?
No, you don't.
No, you
You're
actually you
calling me.
don't, Councilman. I had called
Sorry, Councilor.
I
but,
called Councilman
I beg your
Matusky
pardon.
to order before you
No
started
problem.
speaking.
Sorry.
At any rate, Councilman Marchese is absolutely right. This building has been stunted for years. It was the old location of Sal's Pizza, I believe. And I don't think there's been anybody living in there for at least 20 years, but it's a big stretch on Ferry Street. But you're going to repair the sidewalks, it says right here,
Yes, sir.
to pristine condition,
Correct.
all right? We're not going to have any dips in the sidewalk or on the street.
No, customer's contractor will make sure that it's all put back.
Okay. I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight. I see that the developer is here. Every once in a while, they do show up, and this man, I want to wish you the best of luck, and I'm going to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Councilman Del Sol.
My colleague asked the same question I was going to ask. Just one more comment on that. On the sidewalks, you can have a trench going down the sidewalk, pave it, then come back and take all the slabs up and replace them with concrete?
Correct,
Is that
sir.
what's going to happen?
Sidewalk restoration, correct.
How long will this take?
I can't be sure what their contractor will, how long he'll take, but it will be the contractor's.
Did you say it was, oh, yeah. How long of a stretch is it?
It's like from our manhole to the property where we'll enter is around 40-odd feet.
40 feet.
Yeah. If I was to guess, probably 6 or 8 maybe,
Days,
panels.
panels?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Hanlon. Okay, right now, the motion before you, and that's been seconded, is to postpone this till the next meeting. Is there another motion?
Motion favorable action.
Second.
We have a motion for favorable action second, so we vote on the first motion first, which is postponement. Okay, so now that kills that motion. So now the only motion before you is for favorable action.
Favorable action.
Yeah, we haven't had a public hearing.
Excuse me, I will open it as soon as I can speak. This is customary, thanks. Thank you for coming up.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to open the public hearing for this item. I'm going to ask 3 times if you're in favor of this item. Okay, are you in favor of this? In favor of this item? Second time, are you in favor of this item? Yes. Is there anyone in the audience in favor of this item? Would you like to come up and speak on it?
Yes, sir.
Please state your name for the record and your address.
My name is Bob Ainello Electric, sir. We will be the electrical contractor installing the conduit. It's a short piece of conduit on the sidewalk from the corner of Ferry Street to the property. Should take maybe a day or 2 tops. 1 day to excavate and install the conduits. We'll get the inspections hopefully the next day, and the excavation contractor will put in new sidewalks the next day. It's a real short piece underground into the property.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Third time, anyone in favor of this item? Thank you. I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. Anyone opposed to this? Second time, anyone opposed to this item? Third time, anyone opposed? Close that portion of the meeting. Okay. We have a motion to close public hearing. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We have a motion for favorable action. It's been seconded. Clerk will read the roll.
Counsel Capone.
Yes.
Counsel Della Sola.
Yes.
Counsel DeFlorio. Counsel DePiero.
Yes.
Counsel Hanlon.
Yes.
Counsel Marchese.
Yes.
Counsel Matusky.
Yes.
Counsel McKinnon.
Yes.
Counsel McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counsel Simonelli. And President Napolitano.
Yes.
That would be 10 yeas, 0 nays, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you. You have passed item number 2. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to open public participation. Do I have a second? All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, before we open public participation, I just want to let the public know that public participation by charter is 10 minutes long. Each speaker is allocated 2 minutes. There are roughly 7 people on the list. I'd ask that if you're part of either the same group or same department, that you consolidate, that you elect a spokesperson. I will allow a little bit, we will end up going over a little bit over, but I'm also going to be holding you to about a minute and a half, so we stay within the charter. Okay, so, Ms. Clerk, if you'll invite the first speaker up.
First speaker is Ms. Denise Hanlon.
And I also want to remind the public that the city council is not allowed to respond to your comments. We're taking your comments in for future consideration. Please have a seat, and your name, please.
My name is Denise Hanlon. I'm the principal of the Webster School. As a resident and an educator of over 40 years, I am requesting that you please release the money that Senator Sal DiDomenico secured for our schools. Our children are our future, as everybody here knows, and our city depends on their education for our city to move forward. Please help us to give our children what they need and what our children deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk will read the next
Next speaker is Benjamin Murray.
Is Mr. Murray here?
Okay.
Okay.
And then the next, we have a few people from the school administration, Mr. Obremski, Mr. Shaw, and Mr. Norman. I didn't know if you want to come up together.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. My name is Charles Obremski. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and I reside at 151 SD Street in Everett, where I have my entire life for 52 years. I want to let everyone know that the Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Forrester, would be here this evening, but he's actually celebrating his 49th wedding anniversary, so he's away with his wife. Recently, it's been reported in one of the local papers that the school department was fully funded with the budget request for this current school year, with an additional $6.5 million in city funds above net school spending. That statement is only partially accurate. At the April 10th School Finance Review Commission meeting, I informed the School Finance Review Commission that the schools needed $10.5 million above net school spending to keep all staff and services fully funded for this fiscal year. The $10.5 million did not include any raises for any school department employees. Ms. Auger, the president of the Teachers Association, who is in the audience this evening, is a member of the commission and was present when these statements were made. There was discussion about looking into giving the schools more money from the commission, but the chief financial officer, Mr. Eric Demers, requested that we go forward with the $6.5 million that was recommended at that time, so it would be in compliance with charter deadlines, which had specific deadlines that our budget had to be set by, and the council and the mayor could amend the budget at a later date. Well, today is the later date. Based on the statement with the additional appropriation from the state and not the taxpayers, we are asking the mayor and the city council to give the school department the money that the state senator, Sal DiDomenico, worked very hard to get, and the state legislature allocated to the students in the Everett Public Schools when the final state budget was passed on August 1st in the amount of $2,515,109. This money is a combination of low-income money for low-income students, Chapter 70 money, a slight reduction in our charter school reimbursement, and a slight reduction in our charter school assessment. That's how you get that total. I have provided you with a packet of all this information for you this evening. You could take a look at your leisure. If you have any questions, you may call me anytime. Since this money that the city had no idea was coming, and it comes from the state legislature, I know that the mayor and the city council will do the right thing and what's best for the children of Everett, and will allocate this money to the children in the school department so that we reduce our current class sizes, which Mr. Shaw will talk about now, which are very high. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Shaw. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. The question has arisen a couple of times of whether we actually need the $2.5 million, and if we do get the $2.5 million, where will it go? Where will we allocate it to? Simply put, we are going to use the $2.5 million, if it's so allocated to us, to hiring teachers to reduce our class sizes. I just want to go through. Mr. Obremski, Mr. Forrester, and myself have met with the principals on a number of occasions since the beginning of the year, and we've developed a critical needs section of who we need to hire right away because of expanded class sizes. At the Adams School, we'd hire a special education teacher and a paraprofessional. At the English School, in grade 5, the class sizes average 30. We'd like one more grade 5 teacher to bring those class sizes down to 23, as well as 2 special education teachers. At the Cavarian School, we need a teacher at grade 2, grade 4, grade 5, and grade 7. The average class size in those 4 grades is 29. By hiring an additional teacher at each of those grade levels, that would bring the class size down to 22. We also need a paraprofessional at the Cavarian School. At the Lafayette School, we need a grade 3, grade 4, and grade 6 teacher. Once again, class sizes average out at 29 each of those grade levels. Hiring an additional teacher for each of those would bring it down to 23. We also need a special education teacher, an English language learner teacher, and 3 paraprofessionals at the Lafayette School. The Parlin School has 27 students in each of the 4 kindergartens that we have. Another kindergarten teacher would bring that down to 22. We also need a grade 5, 7, and 8 teacher. Class sizes in those classes, once again, are 29. Another teacher in each of those would bring it down to 23. A technology teacher and a physical education teacher. The Webster School needs a kindergarten teacher to bring class size down to 19. The Webster School Extension needs a pre-K 4-year-old teacher. We have 22 to 24 kids in our pre-K 4 classes. Another teacher would bring it down to 18. The Whittier School needs a grade 3 and a grade 5 teacher. Class sizes there are also 27. Another teacher at each of those grade levels would bring it down to 20, and 1 paraprofessional at the high school. So to summarize, we'd need 18 general education teachers, 4 special education teachers, 6 paraprofessionals, and 1 English language learner teacher. So those are the critical needs that we have. We look forward to receiving that money from the mayor and from the city council so that we can in fact put teachers in front of students, teachers that have been laid off, bring them back and put them in front of students and reduce our class sizes to much more normal numbers. Thank you.
And I just want to make one further comment. The faster we get the money, the faster we can reduce the class size. So if you, hopefully you choose to allocate the money to the school department, the faster you get us the money, the faster we can reduce those class sizes. We already met with the principals. We're ready to do it tomorrow if you allocate the money.
Thank you.
One last speaker. Jessica Harrelson.
Good evening to the esteemed members of the Everett City Council. My name is Jessica Gold Harrelson, and I'm an Everett resident and a public school educator with the Malden Public Schools. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment today. I urge the City Council and the Mayor to work towards allocating the Chapter 70 money, over $2.5 million, that our tirelessly working State Senator Sal DiDomenico earmarked for Everett's public schools. I understand that Mayor DeMaria went above and beyond to meet the school department's budgetary asks this year. Yet the fact remains, there's still a crisis. Nearly 100 staffers were quietly laid off over the summer, and according to the state legislature's own accounting, Everett is still $19 million short of being underfunded, let alone $2.5 million. But just imagine what that money could do for students in Everett. We could have more teachers so that, as the superintendent as the assistant superintendent just said, elementary school students would not be languishing in developmentally inappropriate classes of almost 30 children. There could be more special educators so that students in pull-out classes could actually see small groups and not class sizes of 20, which is not genuinely a small group. These $19 million, well, these $2.5 million really, encompass an ethical debt that Massachusetts legislature and this city have to Everett parents, students, and teachers. Every day, the fine staff of the Everett Public Schools work very hard under austerity conditions that we don't recognize. They do more with less every single day to give our kids a world-class education. I'm reminded of the quote that budgets are moral documents and that we fund what we value. Imagine what we could do if you urged the mayor to allocate the money from the state senator to fulfill his gift to create the schools our community truly deserves. Thank you.
Okay, that's the last speaker. I'll entertain a motion to close Do I have a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you for coming up. Clerk will read item number 3.
Can we
Unless you
suspend
have
the
a sign-in
rules?
sheet.
Can we suspend the rules and take item number 12, please?
12 and 7.
We have a motion to suspend the rules, take item number 12.
Mr. Hanlon has his hand up, Counselor Hanlon.
It's been seconded. Counsel McKinnon?
I need to read it first.
Take chair.
Item number 12. Item number 12, Madam Chairman, is a resolution offered by Councilors Peter Napolitano, Michael McLaughlin, John Hanlon, Fred Capone, and Richard Delasola, that the mayor is requested to appear before the City Council Committee of the Whole to discuss the $2.5 million in additional Chapter 70 funds.
Counselor Hanlon?
This is number 12, yeah.
I'm sponsored.
He's also a sponsor, Mr. President. He had his hand up first. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue. This is not daycare kindergarten. I understand you're a sponsor. He's also a sponsor, and I came up here with his hands up. Your hand wasn't up.
Good. Please, by all means. Okay, no, definitely not take.
Am I all set?
Yes,
Okay.
Counselor Hanlon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In reading item number 12, the question says that the mayor is requested to appear before the City Council Committee of the Whole. And that's us, but we're not the City Council of the Whole at this moment. We're the City Council. And what I'm interested in doing is to change this to refer it to the School Finance Review Commission. I think that's where this should go. The fact is that we have several members of the City Council on that commission. We have several members of the School Committee on that commission. We have some other City of Everett members, the finance officer. We have the mayor, the solicitor is on it, also the superintendent of schools is on it. I think the assistant superintendent of schools is on it. All of those people on that committee make a pretty powerful committee if they can ever get down to business and get this stuff solved. So I think that putting this into the City Council Committee on the Whole is going to discuss things that we're going to have to send it to that committee anyway. Because the City Council, we have no authority to put money into a budget. We have no money to ask money to be spent. We can ask someone to put up the money, but we have no power, nothing to say, put that $2 million in the budget. We don't have that at all. And I don't want to kid anybody thinking that you're coming before us and saying we're going to give you $2.5 million, because we're not, because we are not authorized to do that. And that's why I think that this should go straight to the Committee on School Finance. That's where it belongs. So that's my motion.
I have a motion on the table. I have a second.
But second,
On the motion.
we call for the question.
Call for the question.
According to the council rule, I have to call for the question.
Okay.
Counsel Capone.
No.
Counsel Delasola.
Yes.
Counsel DeFlorio.
Yes.
Counsel DePiero.
Yes.
Counsel Hanlon.
Yes.
Counsel Marchese.
Yes.
Counsel Matusky.
Yes.
Counsel McKinnon.
Yes.
Counsel McLaughlin.
No.
Counsel Simonelli.
Yes.
And President Napolitano.
No.
That would be 8 yeas, 3 nays. You have referred it to
Vote.
the School Finance Review Commission.
Counsel
when-
Marchese?
When will that meeting be, and will it be televised?
November 1st at, I believe, 5:30. It'll be posted.
Will it be here?
Yes, the discussion we had with the clerk of
I would
committees is
recommend
he did not
everybody attend
schedule
that
any
What was the
meeting.
date for that again?
Next Thursday, November 1st.
Okay, first of all, the City Council chambers, I'm speaking now as Council President, City Council chambers are reserved for for committee meetings on Mondays and Thursdays. If there is a committee meeting already scheduled, the council chambers are not available.
There isn't one.
Fine, just want to clarify that.
Okay, so the order has passed to
Yes,
send
passed.
it to the, refer to the School Finance
Review
Committee?
Commission.
Commissioner. It is going to be televised,
That will
and
be
it
in the
starts at
chambers.
6 o'clock?
I'd have
Is
to
it
double
6?
check. 5:30, I believe, is the time, but it'll be posted.
So posted at 5:30, and the public is allowed to
public,
come in
yep.
and make comments. Is that correct? Okay.
As long as it's up to the members, yeah.
All right, thank you.
There's another sign-in sheet, item number 7.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we take a 2-minute recess. Just to let them get out.
Second.
We'll take a 10-minute recess to allow the audience to clear.
If I may, Mr. President, I'd like to move to reconsider item number 1.
There's a motion and a second to reconsider item number 1.
And Council Capone was on the prevailing side, so the motion can go before it, Mr. President.
It's a vote, it's a roll call.
Yes, I was just stating that.
Clerk will read the roll, please, to reconsider item number 1. There's a quorum.
Not for reconsideration.
He's getting them in. They've got the bodies here.
I need a vote on reconsideration.
No, I need Rosa here. We're going to vote, I need Rosa out here.
This is a motion to reconsider item number 1. Counselor Capone?
Yes.
Counselor Della Sola?
Yes.
Counselor DeFlorio? Counselor DePiero?
Yes.
Counselor Hanlon? Yes. Counselor Marchese? Counselor McKinnon?
Yes.
Counselor McLaughlin?
Yes.
Counselor Simonelli?
No.
And President Napolitano?
Yes.
You got Matusky? You got Matusky?
Counselor Matusky?
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 nay, you have reconsidered the item. It is back before you.
Mr. President?
Clerk will read the item first, and then,
The item number 1 is in accordance with the provisions of Section 12 of the zoning ordinances of the City of Everett. The City Council hereby amends the zoning ordinance as follows. Section 32, inclusionary zoning, that the affordable housing percentage be amended to encourage development.
Councilman Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could please have Mr. Sopa, Mr. Souza, and the representative from, I believe, Copeland Page before us, that'd be great.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Council Capone, once
Thank
they
you.
introduce themselves.
Just
Could you please reintroduce yourself for the public?
Jim Sopa, Director of Inspectional Services, City of Everett.
Good evening, Jonathan Silverstein, KP Law.
Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to our guests. I'm glad that we're reconsidering it. I don't want to see it revert back to 20% because clearly we found that 20% isn't working. 10% is the state requirement. I had made a motion that we cap it at the 15%. And in your opinion, is that something that would work? We could, with Section E, I don't have an issue with the discretion on part of the planning board to reduce it down as much as 5%. So if you could speak to whether or not that would satisfy your personal and professional concerns, I would appreciate it.
In my professional opinion, that would satisfy our need to move forward as a community to entice developers and to let them know what's available for inventory for land and what they can do to make a profit to come into our community and clean up the land that is contaminated. That's one of the primary things that I think is important here.
Okay. And I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that? Or?
Sure. So just really briefly, as I understand it, Councilor Capone, your proposal would be in Section 4A to change 10% to 15%. And in Section 4E, we would go back to the original proposal language except substituting 10% for 5%.
Correct. And on the number of units we could do, I'll leave this to your discretion. The first 10 units, leave it at 10% or some number, and then any number of units above that, that would become the 15%. So. Would that satisfy?
So if I understand the question is setting a minimum number of units before the inclusionary zoning is required. So the suggestion was 10 units, and I'd like Director Souza to speak on that as well.
That's fine, I don't care.
Do you think that number needs to be a little higher?
It's more of a policy question, I think, than a legal question.
Yeah.
In terms of the percentage, are we talking about 15%?
15% with a discretion to go down to 5 on the part of the planning board. Right now in Section 2A, the threshold that triggers inclusionary, just at the top of that same page, the second page, is 6. So 6 units or more triggers inclusionary. Whether it's 6 or 10, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, so, it's set up right now, I guess, at 6, and we could increase that number to 10, maybe.
I believe I think that's the correct number at this point, 10.
And then anything over 10 would be subject to 15%.
Correct.
And then what we'll do is we'll go to that, the discretionary section, and that can go down to 5%.
And that would be a discretion of the planning
Within
board.
the discretion of the planning board. And any concerns or issues with that?
I'm
sorry.
On the fraction position, is it anything, maybe
It's-
if it's, we run around down.
Yeah, I would leave it alone. We can always figure it out.
The 10 is a minimum. Anything over 10 would be subject to the 15%.
Correct. I don't have any other questions. I don't know if I called.
Councilman Hanlon?
I wanted you back just to ask you a question, and just, you, Mr. Silverstein, I want your impression of what we're doing. Is it good for us? Is it bad? I don't mean that kind of a thing, but legally, because you're our legal guy for the city of Everett, are we in good shape? Are we doing the right thing legally, to changing this thing, this ordinance? I don't want anyone coming back to us and saying you've done the wrong thing, and that, we're not making money, we're losing money, or we're making too much money. I just wanted you to look on it.
Yeah. I mean, look, as a community, you never want to leave anything on the table. If you knew that exact number of affordable units that would get people to develop, the maximum you could get out of them, then obviously you'd pick that. It's a little bit of a guessing game. We know that 20% hasn't worked out. I want to back up just briefly. In terms of being vulnerable to Chapter 40B developments, Chapter 40B is called the anti-snob zoning law. And it's called that for a reason. It's meant for richer suburban communities that have 2-acre, 3-acre lot requirements, and you have a big plot of land, 20 acres, and maybe you can get 5 houses on it. Or you can come in under Chapter 40B and build 300 houses, and that's where you make real money. That's where the differential is. The thing you have to remember is a 40B developer has to dedicate 25% of the units as affordable. And so when you have a community like Everett, which doesn't stop multifamily housing, the state wants to see multifamily zoning. You have multifamily zoning, you just passed a really good ordinance to encourage it. So I don't think this is so much a matter of you being vulnerable to 40Bs. Yes, you're not at the 10%, but is someone going to want to come in and build 25% affordable when they can get the same density without, at 15% with the possibility of reducing that? I don't think so. So really what it's a matter of is trying to encourage development of affordable housing in 2 ways. One way Councilor Capone mentioned, which is, through the inclusionary units that are deed restricted, but another way the mayor mentioned, which is just building supply, which is going to have a downward trend on the market. So yes, I think this is a good compromise. I think it makes some of the councilors more comfortable. It still accomplishes the goal of hopefully trying to encourage some redevelopment of some, properties that I think the city would like to see redeveloped.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the 5% that I had amended for it to be automatic, and the reason why I like it to be automatic is so people don't have to go in front of the planning board. Because you can't pick and choose who you want to give it to and who you don't want to give it to. I just thought that automatic was a more honest way of doing business. So basically, this is, if anybody that has a limitation of the property, like in other words, if it's just for a junkyard, they have to have a certificate. If they don't have a certificate, we're not just going to say everybody's going to be, like I explained before, if I drop oil in my driveway, it doesn't mean that all my land is contaminated. So I like to leave that 5% in as automatic, shall be automatic. So, Mr. Soper, what do you,
Well, one thing I'd like to say about that is that from the developer's standpoint, when they're looking at a piece of property and they know there's an AUL on that property because it's registered with the deed of that property, it's known, that developer is in better position to know his expenses or know his probability of getting the project off the ground if it is a decision that doesn't have to be made by the planning board, if it's already been made in the ordinance. So there is some benefit for that. So if you're a developer and you know that you're going to be able to cut it to the 5%, you could do your pro forma and understand with the investors how this will come out in the end
Right.
without waiting for the planning board.
right, so that was my only thing that I like to see, that automatic staying in there, knowing where the contract is gonna be, knowing that he can go to the bank, knowing that he can finance it, and knowing where he's gonna stand, without coming to the planning board, and without the planning board making a decision on something that they don't have to. If it's automatic, it's automatic. So,
Is it appropriate for me to, just one comment. I think that is certainly going to be something that will be more attractive to developers. I think from the permitting standpoint, obviously that's something that city staff were comfortable with. I guess, you know, the old adage, the perfect being the enemy of the good. I think we need 8 votes to get this amendment passed, and I wouldn't suggest that I should, tell the council how to run its business, but my concern would be that while I think that's a policy decision, I think there are 2 legitimate viewpoints on it, but we're already back in front of you for the second time. I wouldn't want to go for 3. So that's the only
but
thing
I
I
don't
would
see
say.
why anybody wouldn't wanna go with something that's automatic and not leave it up to the board to pick and choose. So, I think it's a more honest way of doing business, but whatever the board would like, that's fine with me. Thank you.
Councilman Del Sol.
Before we vote on this, I have a question. So if you have 10 units or less, it's 10%?
10 units or less is not affected.
It's not affected at all?
Not affected, not affected.
10 units or more would be 15.
So we said more than 10 units, so that would, so
More
it'd be
than
starting
10.
at 11 units, right? And so it'd be 15% of 11. And we have a round-off provision. I believe we're rounding down.
So if it's 12 or 80, it's still 15%? Doesn't matter how many units there will be?
That's correct,
In the
yes.
final development?
That's correct.
Okay, next question I have is, most developers, when they come in for a site, what's the percentage that you know it's already contaminated before they even start getting involved?
I'm sorry, the question is, how do you know if it's contaminated?
No, not, a developer comes in. Let's say he went to Sacramone Park. He wanted to build a condo down there.
Sure.
Would he have known before he went in? Just what's the percentage in Everett, when builders come in, developers, what's the percentage that people know when they're going to purchase it, it's already contaminated?
Honestly, I can't tell you an exact percentage, but since I've been here for the last 7 years in permitting jobs, every one of these multifamily buildings that have been developed has had a problem with contamination, and oftentimes worse than suspected by the AUL. It's written, it says you can't go less than or greater than 30 inches below grade. And then when they dig there, they find, green soil in these areas, and that stuff's got to come out. So what happens is an engineer has to show up who's a specialist in soils and make sure that all that contaminated soil is moved from the site to proper disposal areas. So it's a kind of a roll of the dice for these developers as it is going in when they know there's an AOL.
Thank you.
There are no more speakers. Councilman Matusky?
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, I'm in favor of the 10%. Now, we're going to up this to 15, is that? Because we have to reach eight votes on this council, okay? And after hearing from you gentlemen tonight, I'm in favor of 10, but every once in a while, to get to this magic number, I don't want 15%, I want 10. But see, I'm a reasonable person, And I'm going to vote for this 15% that I'm not in favor of, just to move this forward, okay? I just want you to understand. I want to see development in this city, and it's been stifled. Everybody wants affordable housing, low-income housing. We need that in Everett. We all understand that. I, for one, I was on the housing board for 3 years, appointed by our mayor, so I know what's needed in housing in this community. But I'm going to vote for the 15%, but I don't want to, okay? I want it to be 10%, but I'm a reasonable person, so rather than stifle this, I'm going to vote for it, okay? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Motion to excuse the customary thanks, and second, all in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, gentlemen. Your pleasure. Council Capone?
Looking to amend the piece so that in paragraph 2A, we change 6 to 10. And then in paragraph 4A, any number of units that exceed 10 would have to be 15%. And then on 4E, we'd be putting the language that Councilor Fleury had mentioned before, increasing it to up to 10%, but it wouldn't be mandatory.
Councilman Capone has the floor. Please finish your motion.
I think the clerk has the language, and what that would do is, rather than make it automatic, we're going to leave it in the discretion of our planning board. We'll give them the ability to reduce it by 10%, so that if there is a hardship for a developer, and they are doing something that's beneficial to the community, the planning board has the discretion to reduce it. The reason why, and I understand what my colleague wants to do with the mandatory, the reason why I'm not in agreement with the mandatory is there's no reason for us to cut our wrists right at the get-go. You might have a developer that can work it into their numbers to accommodate more housing units, so why cut your wrist? If they can't, if the numbers are tight, they have the opportunity to make the plea to the planning board. The planning board has got the discretion and the experience to work with them to make it work for everyone. So I think by leaving it open and leaving it in the discretion of the planning board, you're actually helping the developer, you're helping the community, and you're leaving the discretion of the planning board.
Do I have a second?
There's two different motions now. Now we get the planning board back involved, Mr. President?
No, it's just an amendment to the motion.
I'm going to vote to do the percentage change. But the planning board part of it, where does that come into the picture?
It's not automatic anymore now. We're going to...
Council Capone, can you please answer that question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to my colleague. It's already in here. It's already in the section, and it had set up for 5%. So by increasing it to 10%, what we're doing is, because we've increased the 15, we're bumping the 10 up to keep the math the same. If it wasn't 15, it would have stayed at 5.
All right. Well, I Mr. President, do I have...
Yes, you do.
Thank you. No, I'm going to vote for the percentage change, but I'm not voting to give this back to the planning board. No. That's two different motions here.
No, the piece is not going back to the planning board. We're voting on to approve it as amended this evening. That is the ordinance.
All right, so 5% stays. On the contaminated land?
If my understanding on this is that the intent is for 15%, if I could, my understanding is it's 15%. If there's a heavily contaminated issue, they have the ability to go before the planning board to then have that amount reduced. The council does not want it to be automatic, because there may be developers that can work within that framework and still be able to provide additional low-income housing. But they have that, the provision gives them the ability to be able to come in and request it down based on a case-by-case basis. Is that correct, Council Capone?
All right, thank you for the...
on the motion?
Okay, Council Matusky still has the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, every once in a while, we have to be flexible up here. I wanted the original motion to pass. We needed 8 votes. We only had 6. I'm going to vote for this change, but, I'm not really happy with it. I like the original. I think it'll infuse the development in this community. And I live right on top of all this stuff. I breathed it in all my life. My neighbors have. Everything on the Parkway, Market Forge is my next door neighbor. I want to see something decent happen here. I want to see these scrap yards move out of Everett, too. But, I'm going to be flexible. And I think some councilmen should actually be a little more flexible also. But I'm going to vote for this, and, let's hope that the developers come here and see the quality of Everett is good, But I'm not happy to change my vote. But I'm going to do it to appease, it's a funny thing. You lose a vote, 6-4, and then you got to change, but that's the way the rules are. So I'm going to vote for the amendment, reluctantly.
Councilman DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not happy either. There's one thing that I want to know. I want to know how much growth we're going to get in this in 6 months. Because if this is going to hold us back for getting the growth, then I want to change it back to what I originally voted for. It's proven. Out of 20, we got 0. I don't know what this board doesn't understand. All right? So I'm going to vote for it because I'm also flexible, okay? A little piece of the pie is better than nothing. But this isn't the right vote.
On the motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the floor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, actually, if you, okay, Councilman, I'll control the chair. I see Councilman McLaughlin's hand. Councilman McLaughlin, you haven't spoken on this piece yet. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I echo the comments of some of my colleagues about being able to fluctuate and being able to work with my colleagues to come to a happy medium. But I really think that the happy medium has to end somewhere. And I think by the amendment to the piece on the contaminated land is where my drawing of the line is in the sand. I will support the 15%, but I really think that if we're going to start to clean up sites in our community and we're going to take an initiative to really clean up some dirty sites in our community and we really want to see smart growth happen in the city of Everett, we need to give these developers some relief. We need to be able to help these developers out. We don't want to necessarily be making money for developers, but we want to be able to compromise so that we can see them clean sites, get brownfields out of the way, and to be able to develop them in the right direction, in the right path. So I cannot support the amendment. If we want to talk about how to divide this question, we can do that. But if we're going to put this together as one piece, I sadly can't support it because I don't think it, as Councilor DeFlorio said, helps us in the long term at all. I think it just keeps us where we are today, which is seeing 0 affordable units. If we want to keep people in Everett, we need to build affordable units to keep them in the city of Everett. That is my take on this piece.
Councilor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. To belabor the dead horse, I think we're losing sight of the fact if we don't accept the amendments, we're not making any progress. And I don't think that 5% is going to kill development. We can see. We can see. We saw 20 didn't work. Maybe 15 won't. But we can see. I honestly don't think the additional 5% is going to cripple the marketplace. And I do appreciate that my colleagues have kept an open mind to the amendment, and they were flexible. And I want to point out that I was flexible too. I was on the prevailing side. I'm the one that reconsidered it. I didn't have to reconsider it. I could have left it dead. I reconsidered it. I spoke with Community Development and ISD and Council, and they think it's a reasonable solution. Usually everyone doesn't walk away from a compromise thrilled. That's government, that's life. So you try to find something that works for everybody. That's where we're at. And I appreciate the flexibility of my colleagues, but I don't want them to be lost in sight that the flexibility that they have is only to be shown because I was flexible in the beginning and reconsidered the piece. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, right now we have a motion on the floor with an amendment.
On the motion, I just want to remind that the original...
I'm going to have the clerk read the motion first.
The original came back from the board at...
Okay, I'm going to have the clerk read the amendment first.
Mr. President, the amendment is under section 32, number 2, applicability, 2A, instead of in a total of 6, it changes to in a total of 10. Under Section 4, affordable units, equal to 10%, it will be equal to 15%. In item on also number 4, 4E, on the fourth line, it'll change from 5% to 10%. And Councilwoman DeFlorio's original amendment, and for any site which has recorded activity and use limitation, a reduction to additional, instead of 5%, it'll be 10%, shall be at the discretion of the planning board, will be the amendment. Those are all the amendments as I saw them, and is that all correct, Mr. Council Capone? So those are all the amendments that we have before us. You can divide a piece, yeah. So if you know, but.
Councilman Del Sol, if you
Just
have
a quick comment. Is this, now we have two things we're voting for, or one?
one.
You're voting for one piece,
So
all
it'll be
completely
10%
amended.
and then the 15.
Okay, I believe Councilman Matusky had called for the question.
Yep.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Clerk will read the roll.
Favorable action as amended for enrollment again, Council Capone.
Yes.
Council Della Sola.
Yes.
Council DeFlorio. Councilor DePiero.
Yes.
Councilor Hanlon.
Yes.
Councilor Matusky. Councilor McKinnon. Council McLaughlin. Council Simonelli.
Yes.
And President Napolitano.
Yes.
That is 7 yeas.
I've got 8.
I don't. Councilor Marquez did not vote, so we only have 10 members, so it's 7.
I'd like to reconsider it and make the motion to change to 5%. I make a motion to reconsider.
DeFlorio.
Second.
McKinnon. And Mr. Marquez did not, so. I have the number, right?
Okay. No, that's okay. I got it. Okay, reconsider, okay, the item has failed. Okay.
Yes.
Did you ask for, I asked for reconsideration.
We were already in reconsideration.
But yeah, so it was amended, so.
That was amended.
Okay,
So
so
they
I
have
have
the right to
favorable-
reconsider it yet again.
I have a motion to reconsider it. I have a second.
You're on the prevailing side because it was a negative, it was a no.
Yes.
Okay. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Clerk will read the roll for reconsideration.
Just one moment, I ran out of paper on that piece because of the amendments. 1 second. This is for reconsideration. Council Capone?
No.
Councilor Della Sola?
No.
Councilor DeFlorio?
Yes.
Councilor DePiero?
Yes.
Councilor Hanlon?
No.
I'm sorry, Councilor, I didn't hear you. He said no.
No.
Councilor Marchese? Councilor Matusky?
Yes.
Councilor McKinnon?
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilor Simonelli?
No.
And President Napolitano.
Yes.
6 yeas, 4 nays on reconsidering the item. That does pass. It is reconsidered before you.
Councilman DeFlorio.
I want to make a motion that on item 4, section E stays as it was original. I want to explain something. This has been in front of us before, where the planning board had recommended 10%, and we changed it to 20%. The original order was 10%. So, yeah, this came in front of us last year. And the original order was for 10%, and we changed it to 20. We made all these changes. So my recommendation is, on E, section 4 on E, what I said before stands. The rest can go to 15%, that's fine.
Back to the original amendment that was made.
The original amendment that was made
We
shall
all
be,
voted on.
5% shall be automatic.
We all voted on it.
On the contamination, the 15% is fine.
Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the councilwoman. You know, our planning board has recommended 10%. State law is 10%. the building department director has recommended 10%. The community development office recommended it. And I think the attorney, Mr. Silverstein, Attorney Silverstein, said it was in our best interest. Where's the issue here? We are like no other city around here. Like no other city. We have more contaminated acres in this community than anywhere. And we need to develop it. We're moving forward. We got almost a $3 billion project up the street from all this stuff. We've got to get this together. We need 8 votes. Those who, want it to be a higher number. The planning board has already recommended this. Please, let's vote for the councilwoman's motion, and we've agreed to the 15% change. We'll keep that. I mean, how else can you compromise here? We've been on this issue for an hour and a half, 2 hours almost. All the experts have said it's a good idea. Mr. Sousa, our planning development director, says it's a good idea. They're not going to clean up property and have to give away so many millions of dollars for units that is not going to be feasible for these developers. So, like I said, Everett's a little bit different than other communities, but the state is 10%, and we need to change this. So I appeal to my colleagues, please, vote for the councilwoman's recommendation, and let's move forward here tonight.
Councilman Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to point out to my colleagues that what they're doing, well, first of all, you had 3 experts up here that said 10%. And the reason why you have 10% up here is to give more discretion to the planning board to reduce it to 5%. But if they know better than the experts and they want to leave it at 5%, you're hurting the developer. Works for me. I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Right now, there's no motion in front of you, so we'll make a motion.
Favorable actions.
I was amended.
On the order as amended under section 4, and leave the 15%.
I know exactly what she stated, as long as you know what you're voting on.
And is there a second?
The only thing that changed was 4E.
Clerk will read the roll.
Favorable action as amended. For enrollment, Counsel Capone.
Yes.
Counsel Della Sola.
Yes.
Counsel DeFlorio.
Yes.
Counsel DePiero.
Yes.
Counselor Hanlon.
Yes.
Counselor Matusky. Counselor McKinnon.
Yes.
Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Simonelli.
Yes.
And President Napolitano.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays. You have enrolled
bad.
the ordinance. Mr. President.
Clerk will read the next item of business.
Do we have the sign-in sheet still, Mr. President, item number 7?
So what is it now? It's 10%?
No,
Okay.
no, remember,
15
we
if we want.
suspended the rules and reconsidered.
I think that's what it is, right?
Okay, there is a person on the sign-in sheet for number 7. Take a motion to take item number 7. Have a second? Clerk will read the regular order of business then.
Go.
I'm going, Mr. President.
Okay,
I'm
no,
going.
I'm
I'm going. I have to grab the papers. Item number 3. The President's appointment offered by Council Peter Napolitano as President. That the Everett City Council hereby confirms the approval of appointments of Karen Alzair, Amanda Gill, Ileana Panameno, and Maria Pineda to the Cultural Council for a 3-year term expiring October 2021.
Favorable action.
Motion, favorable action.
On the motion, Mr. President, through you to our clerk.
They're new
Are these
appointments.
new?
Yes, they are.
I move we suspend Rule 20.
The motion to suspend Rule 20, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. There's a motion, favorable action. Need a second?
Second.
Okay. Clerk will read the roll.
Counselor Capone.
Yes.
Counselor Della Sola.
Yes.
Counselor DeFlorio. Counselor DePiero.
Yes.
Counselor Hanlon.
Yes.
Counselor Marchese.
Yes.
Counselor Matusky.
Yes.
Counselor McKinnon.
Yes.
Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Simonelli. Therefore appointed.
Yes.
President Napolitano.
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays. You have confirmed the appointments.
Clerk will read the next item of business.
Item number 4. is an ordinance offered by...
Mr. President, can we suspend the rules, take item number 7?
Second.
We have a motion to take item number 7, it's been second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number 7.
Item number 7, Mr. President, is an ordinance offered by Councilor Michael K. Marchese to amend by deleting Section 10-27 inspection request before occupancy of Article 3 Certificate of Habitability. This was reconsidered by Councilor Marchese on October 10, 2018, in the office of the city clerk.
Councilor
If I may,
Marchese.
We're not...
Councilman Del Sol?
Excuse
One
me?
second. Councilman Del Sol, can you take the chair, please? Councilor Marchese.
We're not deleting the section. What we're doing is changing one word which came out wrong at the last meeting. Yeah, number 7.
We're on 7.
I do have
Excuse me, if I may.
Councilor, you wanted me to read the piece that we amended in
The one-
committee? I mean,
what do we-
in my office, the one
Yes,
that we
one
had
that
originally?
yes, please.
So you would like me to read that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this was,
And how does it run parallel to what we approved here?
it's different, but I'll read it and then I'll read that
Yeah,
also.
there's only one word I'm looking for, and it's the second word, and it goes from must to maybe.
So the owner, one second, Mr. Councilor, I'm
may.
sorry. I want to read, it does say must, I believe, currently.
It's the one that came out of this meeting last
Yeah.
week, just with changing, I'm going to just amend one word change.
Sorry. I have a few committee reports, I just want to make sure I get the right one. So I'm going to read, the committee voted back to report back to the city council with a recommendation for favorable action on the amendment, by amending further the last sentence in the paragraph, so it would be read as follows: any permission or denial to expand additional inspections of that property shall not influence any decision of the originally inspected unit. That kept the word must, which is the owner must request.
Yes.
Your amendment is the owner may request a legal use of status from the building department of the city of Everett. If such an inspection is granted by the property owner for that unit, unit and all common areas shall be allowed access to the ISD, access by the ISD department. No other unit or area not in common with the tenant shall be inspected without property owner approval. Any additional inspections of that property shall not influence any decision of the originally inspected unit. That was the amendment that you had.
That's the amendment we had last week coming out of here. I'm happy
Yeah.
with the piece, I just wanted the one word amended, I want the word must, may be deleted and put, oh wait, no, yeah, excuse me.
And we do have 7 people.
Must to may. You got a few- yeah.
Six directors here that are here to speak on this piece. Yep. So if you like. Yep, I heard, I have your amendment, Counselor. You can, you have, you can vote.
Well, I'd like to
Excuse me,
call-
you can vote on that because we enrolled it, you reconsidered it. It
Yep.
will be for enrollment, not adjournment.
And that's what, okay, I'd like to
And you have-
make that
as
a
long as
form
you
of
make a
motion.
motion, they accept it, but I do know
Make a
that
motion
the-
that we accept the committee report, obviously, right?
We already accepted
We already
the committee
accept, we already accept the
You
committee
want- You
report.
want to amend it.
I want to amend it, that's what this is here for.
Right, so you want to do favorable action as amended?
We amended as,
Yeah, so you want to make a motion to amend it, you would hope for
I
a
want to make a
second
motion, I want to
and
make a
favorable,
motion
and
to amend this.
The president,
Second. And you need the wording from me.
so I
And-
just
and-
ask for yea if they're in favor of the amendment or no.
And
All
the-
of, go ahead,
This is
Counselor.
just for the amendment, to
Just for the
approve
amendment right now.
Counselor.
Okay,
vote.
And then we'll,
so you want my wording for the amendment?
to go from must to may. I'm sorry? I have the wording. The
It's
counselor
must
and
to
I
may,
worked on it.
must to may,
Yes, the
okay.
amendment is from must to may.
Okay, so now, what is it, a vote, we got to take a vote
On the amendment first,
on the amendment.
and then you can favorable action on the piece. So you're just asking to amend it from
Yes.
must to may. You made
Uh-huh.
the motion, I need a second.
All right.
Mr. President, please ask if...
All in favor? All opposed?
All right, none. No. No. I thought it was a voice thing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's aye for yes, you want the amendment, no, you don't want the amendment.
Oh, no, don't go ahead.
So there was only one no, so you're okay, Mr. President. You're okay, Mr. Chairman. Just so you know, we do have 6 department heads here
Yeah.
that are signed in for this piece.
There's 7, actually.
Just letting you know.
I don't really need anybody's conversation.
But they,
We're just changing, it just changed, we get the same power, it's just that they can't storm a house anymore, they have to have permission from the owner. That's what it is. And I'm sure the areas where these gentlemen live, I'm sure that does not exist in their cities. And if it does, I'm wrong. All right? So, I think if it's good enough for their cities, it's good enough for the people of Everett. Call for the question, please.
Second motion.
okay, before I do that, we have 7 on the sign-in sheet. If nobody invites them up, then we have 7. We have 7 on the sign-in sheet before we.
Yeah, they did
Call
make
for
a
the
motion,
question.
second, and
It's
the
our
question
counsel
was
here.
proposed. Yes, I'm agreeing with you.
Question, roll call vote.
Okay.
As amended, to change from must to may, with all the language that I had stated before.
Can I
Okay?
have a clarification, Mr. Chairman? So, you can have, I'm just, because I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand
you
it.
can ask for a clarification
So
on
you can
the-
have
on the
apartments now not receive a HAB certificate and be rented. Is that correct? with
Only
the
if you
amendment?
call for that to be.
But if you don't
Respect-
call, okay, that's just all I need to understand.
That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Favorable action as amended. This is for enrollment. Counsel Capone?
No.
Counselor Della Sola?
Yes.
Counselor DeFlorio? Counselor DePiero?
No.
Counselor Hanlon?
Yes.
Counselor Marchese?
Yes.
Counselor Matusky?
Yes.
Counselor McKinnon?
Yes.
Counselor McLaughlin? Counselor Simonelli?
Yes.
And President Napolitano?
No.
6 yeas, 5 nays. You have enrolled the ordinance.
Good work.
Item number 4, right, Mr. President? We're on 4 now, right? 4. I had it checked off, but I think it was wrong.
We need 4? If you want. Peter.
Mr. President, if we could we suspend the rules and take items 4 and 5 collectively?
We have a motion to take item number 4 and 5 collectively. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read the items.
Item number 4, Mr. President, is an ordinance offered by Councilor Michael Marchese and Fred Capone to prohibit any contract from obtaining any contracts or permits from the city of Everett while a public contracted project they are working on for the city is delayed, unfinished, or over contracted budget. Item number 5, Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Councilor Fred Capone and an ordinance for an open area storage of salt and other items.
Accept the committee reports, grant further action.
Yeah, actually, no
Second.
action necessary from our
Oh, good.
clerk
All
said.
set.
Yep.
Both items are in committee with further time. Do I have a motion to grant further? Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Number 6.
Clerk will read item number 6.
Item number 6 is an order offered by Councilor Peter A. Napolitano as president that the amount of $9,380,000 be appropriated by borrowing as requested in the CIP general fund budget. I do have a committee report I would like to state if I may.
Please.
Thank you. So the Committee on Ways and Means did discuss this last Monday. Their recommendation back to the, I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing, but pretty much they went through the CIP, but their recommendation was to report back to the City Council with a recommendation to refer this to a special council meeting. That way, the administration had enough time to present all the information on all the CIP work, and once they've done so, instead of it being in a committee, we can vote up or down at a special council meeting, rather than going to committee, only some of you being there, not being able to vote on it, and then coming back to the full council. So the thought of the committee was to...
vote it tonight.
So moved.
Well, the thought
We
of the
can't
committee-
vote on it tonight?
Yes, you can. That's your option. Their recommendation was to get more information and do it at a special committee meeting, so that, a special council meeting, that way they could get the information and vote up or down. That is your decision to vote up or down this evening. I was giving you the recommendation.
Could we
of
have-
the committee. Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Demus.
Or maybe that's what you thought it was. I have the minutes. It's special meeting. Special meeting. I actually went to the meeting.
Yeah. No, I just want to get clarification.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yes, I think that was the original one. Yeah, no, it's definitely different.
Okay. Okay, actually, first name on the list, Councilman McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we were still in committee having some questions on some of the items that were not fully understandable with vehicles and other amenities. That's why we asked that we had a special meeting of the council. That way we could get the administration some more time. We could all come to the table and we can vote that night so that we're not continuously kicking the can down the road. We can actually come, have a discussion, figure out what to do. It's a lot of money at one time. We need to figure out how it plays into the whole scheme, the whole big picture of the city, and be able to vote. I thought I made the motion to send it to a special meeting, thinking that it was most appropriate to give all my colleagues the opportunity to chime in and to be a part of spending $9.3 million of taxpayers' money down a 10-year plan. I think we should all be at the table discussing it like there's other matters we should all be discussing. This is one of them. That was why I decided to make a motion that we send it to a special meeting so that we could all be at the table to come together. We are elected officials. We all serve the same purpose, which is the people of Everett. And we all have the same interest. None of us, I will say this, serve our own interests in these chambers. We all care about the taxpayers in the city. We all care about making sure that we keep Everett as affordable and as reasonable as possible. We all come to these chambers every night. Sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes it goes smoothly. But at the end of the day, we all care about the taxpayers in the city. That's why I made the motion to set it for special meeting. Special.
Councilman DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. President. All due respect to my colleague, I understand exactly where he's coming from, but this has been bounced around for numerous times. Number one, when we had the capital improvement plan during the budget, everything was explained to us, line by line. Now, you have to understand the interest rate is going up. This doesn't affect any taxpayer until 2020. So the more time we spend on this, the more it's going to cost our taxpayers. So we can cut it. We don't have to give them $9 million. We can tell them to go out and bond for $8 million. Do what you want. Vote on it. I like to have Mr. Demas up because I like to know the interest rate keeps going up. To bounce this around is not the right thing to do. It's going to end up costing the taxpayer more money.
Second.
So this was explained to us during the capital improvement plan. Am I the only one that saw that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm just dreaming at night over here. It wasn't explained to us?
Well, when she relinquishes the floor, yes.
All right, could I please have Mr. Demas up?
Second.
We have a motion to have Ms. Demas join us. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Demas, when you gave us this order, you did break down everything that this capital improvement plan was for. Is that correct? When the order came in for this $9.3 million, you gave us a breakdown of everything that was going out to bond.
Thank you. Eric Demas, CFO. The entire CIP was presented during the budget process.
Mm-hmm.
However, each of the individual items were not discussed during that process.
Right.
When the order was put forth before
Right.
City Council, yes, it was
So you
detailed
discussed,
out.
that's what I'm saying. So you gave it to what? When you gave us the order, you gave us a breakdown in back of the order. We were here for 1 hour questioning you, and you explained everything. Am I correct? And then it went to committee. This has been bounced around, I don't know how many times. So my point is, right now, if you go out to bond, this does not affect our rating right now. It doesn't get paid until 2020, am I correct? It's not the 2019 budget.
You are correct. Should council authorize the borrowing for these capital-related items, there would be zero impact on the FY19 budget. The reason being is that first payments on any debt issuances don't come due until 6 months after the issuance of the debt. Right now, I'm planning, as I have in the past couple of years, to issue these bonds with other bonds that have already been authorized in between mid-February to early April is the time frame that we're shooting for.
And our school debt will also be coming off next year, is that correct? Some of our school debt?
One of the questions that was posed at the Ways and Means meeting last week was to take a look at and provide information as to the debt that's coming off next year as well as in subsequent years. I'm in the process of pulling that information together, not particularly for Ways and Means, but for the special meeting that was proposed under the Ways and Means recommendation. In addition to that, there was another question that was posed with some scenarios affecting our bond rating. And what would the projected cost look like if we were a AA plus? What would the projected cost be if we were a AA? And what would the projected cost be if we're a AAA? So that there was an understanding of the implications of our bond rating. I'm actually, as soon as that meeting was set, I was planning on either putting that information together or getting our external financial advisor to provide an independent information to
Okay, this is my last
that
question. I
meeting.
don't mean to cut you off, but I only have 5 minutes. So I think I
You
got a
have
half
1
a
minute
second.
left. You have 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you. The interest rate. The longer we wait on this, do you see the interest rate going up? From the time this was in front of us to now, has the interest rate gone up?
I don't recall exactly when this was first introduced. I can tell you at the Federal Reserve's last meeting, they did raise rates. And at the last meeting, they did indicate that they were more than likely to continue to raise rates at their future meetings.
So this, eventually, this $9 million is gonna cost us from bouncing it back and forth. So just cut it, vote for it, cut it. You don't want this amount, cut it. Why are we going back and forth with this?
No
It's gonna
cross,
change.
no cross,
It changes.
no cross debating.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. President. My statement is that Councilman McLaughlin and Councilman McKinnon and Simonelli are on the Ways and Means Committee. And we knew that this would happen, and I don't know how many other questions that the members have here. We're going to invite people. We went through this process last week for 2 hours, you know, and we thought in the best interest and fairness to the membership that a special committee meeting of the whole, which I won't be at because I've already attended my committee meeting, and I have the information that I needed and that I asked. We did this as a courtesy to our colleagues that are on the Ways and Means Committee, unless some of you want to vote in favor of it tonight, or however you feel like voting. That's the only reason why Councilman McLaughlin made this motion, so that we could move these meetings along a little bit faster, you know, in the interest of fairness to our invited guests and so forth. That's where we're at here tonight. But, you know, the councilman and their committee decided that, you know, we don't want to spend an hour and a half on this because we already were at the committee meeting. It's not fair to us to go through this process. You know, really, think about it. You appointed us to this committee, Mr. President. We came out with the motion was made and agreed upon that a committee of the whole, because we know that this is a lot of money. And we know that some members might
Councilman, if I could just ask, there are two different things. There's a special meeting of the city council, in which case council rules apply. There's a committee of the whole, which committee rules apply. I believe the notes indicate that it's a special meeting of the city council. And the only reason I'm asking for clarification, because those that are watching that know the difference are going to get confused by that.
Right, so it's a committee, a special committee.
Special committee of the city council.
Special
Meeting of the city council.
Right, okay, so that's where we're at, but I, you know, I did have some concerns about and I want to mention this too, and Mr. Demas already knows it, the Fuller Street Playground. It's a very small tot lot. And it's going to cost, I think it was in the $900,000 range. I mean, it's only like 2 house lots. And it's a very nice neighborhood, but I mean, $1 million, I mean, how many swings and slides can you put in there? And it was done over 20 years ago for $80,000. I recall because, as you recall, Councilwoman LaCours was very involved in that area. But $1 million to do, $900,000 to do a very small tot lot. I mean, we're not talking the Ritz-Carlton here. You know, these numbers, but then again, you know, I don't know. These swing sets cost a lot of money now. But it seems a little high to me. But that's why we made this committee meeting, decided to let you, the rest of it, but if you want to ask all your questions tonight, maybe we could vote on it. But if we're going to be here for an hour, it's not fair to the Ways and Means Committee. That's all I want to say.
Councilor Marchese, did you have your hand up to speak on this?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is just send it to the same committee that's sitting here tonight.
No. The special meeting of the city council
Yeah.
is just like this meeting here. It's just the word special in front of it.
Yeah.
You guys authorized.
The same
you have-
people are going to be at it, aren't they?
Correct, but what you were waiting for, what the committee was waiting for
Yeah.
was the information that Mr. Demas stated. The effects on the tax rate, how.
Yeah, but there is no effect on it if it doesn't
Right. when
transfer, it doesn't
right, not
come
for-
into
until
play to
2020.
2 years.
They were going to ask questions on, what was the other thing, Mr. Demas? I'm sorry.
Future debt service.
Future debt service, right. When the schools are coming off, what we're losing, and how this will affect, how much we owe in the future.
Maybe I'm in a little bubble here, but aren't we getting like a $40 million kiss on the lips start next May? And we're worried about $9 million all of a sudden and stretching out over 10 years? It's a no-brainer. So we're going to save $200,000 and have another 6 meetings on it?
They actually already cut $200,000, so the actual amendment is 9.18.
Well, don't take it out of Fuller Street. All right.
All set, Counselor? Counselor McKinnon?
Through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Demas. I know that we made a couple of requests at the Ways and Means hearing. I know that information is forthcoming. I know that we wanted to go to the committee members at that point. The bond, you explained during, I think it was an hour and 15, an hour 20-minute meeting that we had that night, that the bond rating would go out on the 2020 year. That would be when it would impact us as a city. It would not have any impact on the 2019 tax rate at all whatsoever. We're waiting on all the information to come back from debt relief that's coming off, and also the AA plus that we have now. How do we get to a AAA bond? That information there, as well as the vehicles, correct?
Everything with the exception of the vehicles. The vehicles that were included in the original CIP that was put forth as part of the CIP as a whole, has not been presented by the mayor to city council for any borrowing appropriation. The mayor is currently working and sitting and having those discussions with department heads, doing his due diligence to make sure that it makes sense to move forward with those purchases. And at this time, we're not ready to put forth.
Will that be part of the information that's coming to us as well, that we're waiting on, or no?
I guess with everything else going on, it's going to depend on what date you set this future meeting.
All right. So, I mean, I was ready to vote that night. I know some members were, and then some, and then I agreed that we should probably send this out, so that it gives our rest of our colleagues time to actually, talk to you guys about this to see where we're at. But it wasn't for lack of that committee not wanting to do its due diligence in the committee. We actually had an hour and 15 to an hour 20-minute meeting. We got some real good information. We got the impact on 2020. What is it? 2020. That's when it would be impacting.
Yes.
Okay. We cut it 200,000. It originally was 12 million. It went down to 9 point something. We cut another 2 million out of it. So we did do our work in the committee. So I don't want anybody thinking we don't do work in that committee. But when we kick it back to the floor, we got to sit here for 3 more hours after we do an hour and a half's worth of time in committee, because everybody's going to ask the same questions again, because no one likes to watch the committee meetings or read their reports. That's the, finality of what's happening up here. So, that being said, let's send it wherever we want to send it tonight. Or vote on it tonight. Me, I was ready to vote on it that night, but I'll send it to wherever you want to send it. I don't care.
Councilman DePiero.
Second Councilor Hamlin's motion for favorable action. On the motion, we've made too much progress as a city the last few years, catching up with our awful streets, and some of our parks were deplorable because they've been sitting stagnant for so long.
You're always going to have debt.
We can't
You're
go
a city.
backwards. The debt rates where they are right now, this is bonded out over 10 years. Enough's enough. The Ways and Means Committee did their job. They cut it by what they could. Favorable action.
There's a motion for
So accept
favorable
the
action, been
committee's report.
seconded.
Second.
Do we accept the committee's report with the, whatchamacallits, with the cuts? Is that what we're
There was a motion
voting on
to
here?
accept the
Well, we wanted, with that motion, Mr. President? On the
Good.
motion?
1 second, clerk will clarify.
You're going to accept the committee report with the amendment of the $200,000 cut. So instead of $9,380,000, it's $9,180,000 was what it came out from committee. So that's the actual total. What's on the agenda is incorrect because they
Yep.
ended up
So it's-
cutting it by $200,000.
So we accept the committee's report
As amended, yeah.
as amended, okay.
Favorable action as amended by the committee.
Counsel McKinnon.
I'm all set. Thank
Clerk will read the roll.
Counsel Capone.
No.
Counsel De La Sola.
Yes.
Counsel DeFlorio.
Yes.
Counsel DePiero.
Yes.
Counsel Hanlon.
Yes.
Counsel Marchese.
Yes.
Counsel Matusky.
Yes.
Counsel McKinnon.
Yes.
Counsel McLaughlin. Counsel Simonelli.
Yes.
And President Napolitano.
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay. Mr. President, you have passed the order.
Clerk will read item number 8.
Tony, make sure Fuller Street's done.
Item number 8. Mr. President, is a resolution offered by John Leo McKinnon, Fred Capone, and Councilor Rosa DeFlorio that the city of Everett look into the feasibility of starting an internship program for all departments and to reach out to colleges and trade schools in the area to tap into the talent pool they may have.
Counsel McKinnon, this was postponed from the last meeting because you weren't here.
I'm sorry.
You have the floor.
I apologize for not being here, but I was indisposed, we'll say, at a family, attending a family function. But this right here, I'd like to actually send this, to down to the mayor. We'll refer this down to the mayor's office with a response back within 30 days. Second motion.
We have a motion to refer this to the mayor's office with response in 30 days. A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number 9.
Item number 9. Mr. President, is a resolution offered by John Lou McKinnon, Wayne Matusky, Stephen Simonelli, and Michael Marchese, that the Everett Police Department step up efforts to get rid of the bad element that are hanging around Walgreens parking lot to make it safer for elderly shoppers as well as the general public.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I've actually gone by Walgreens and witnessed that they had a few policemen, plainclothes policemen, uniformed policemen, walking a beat in that area now, and they're going to continue to do so. According to the 3 officers, actually, that showed up tonight, 1 was a captain, 2 was special unit, and they've committed to this, to cleaning it up down there at Walgreens. So I want to thank the captain and the 2 officers that were here for doing so, and also the chief, if he can actually continue this on, so that the elderly feel safe in the area. They can actually go in there and shop without being harassed or not have anyone begging for money out on the property that's there, and or just have unruly people in the area and in the parking lot area of Walgreens. I hate to target one specific area there, Walgreens, but it's Walgreens, a liquor store, a furniture store, and a dollar thrift store, I believe it is. So it's that whole complex, and I believe that now they're actually putting direct beats and direct focus on that from the police department. So I want to thank them, and I believe my colleague had a couple of things he'd like to say about it as well. Councilman Matusky. Councilman Matusky. One at a time. Councilman Matusky.
Councilor
Thank-
Matusky, I'm sorry about that.
Thank you,
It was a
Mr. President.
necessary sidebar, but you do have the floor.
No, thank you, Mr. President. Council McKinnon has represented this area for quite a few years. This evening, we had Captain Pasteri here and 2 undercover police officers to explain what they've been doing, but in the interest of surveillance work, it's probably a good idea that they didn't speak on this. They have cleaned up, they're working on cleaning up that area in Glendale Square that is bringing some illegal activity. And Councilman McKinnon and myself actually parked in the parking lot, and they have direct patrols now. So that area is being cleaned up, and I want to thank, they were here this evening, and they actually signed in, Mr. President, but we had a brief discussion earlier in the meeting with them, and we, in the interest of surveillance work that they're doing, probably a good idea that we didn't have them come forward. But I want to thank the captain for being here, Captain Pasteri, and the 2 officers, 2 detectives, I should say. And I want to thank Councilman McKinnon for actually putting my name down as a sponsor of this. Thank you.
Councilman Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should also ask the police department for like a 5 or a 6-year report on what's been happening down there, how they improve the area, because, this has been before us at least once a year, and sometimes more than that.
Sometimes more than that, yeah.
So we need to find out what the whole overall plan is, not just for tomorrow night. Thank you.
Councilor Simonelli.
Mr. Chairman, through you for Councilman Simonelli, refer to the police department, favorable action.
Councilor Marchese.
It may not be a bad issue to come by some of these 7-Eleven stores, too, and see what hangs around there. I mean, it's getting to the point where people don't go in these stores because there's people out there, there's 16 people with their hands out. Any change? It's not even change, they throw it back at you. But, I mean, they should be frequent these stops to 7-Eleven. Like I said, I've never been a big proponent of this 24-hour stores. I think if you eliminate those stores and you close them up at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I think you'd see a lot of crime off the street after 1 o'clock. And I think they should, I don't know if you could post something, if you're a store owner, no loitering or whatever, but they should be educated on it so that you have the right to tell these people, not in front of the store. Just a suggestion.
I know.
Councilor Melli, could you please repeat your motion? There wasn't a second.
I believe it was to the police,
Refer to the police.
but I just wanted to know if it was for action or a response back. That's all I'm looking for.
I don't know. It wasn't clear.
Excuse
me. Councilor Simonelli, would you please repeat your motion? You had made a motion prior to Councilman Marchese.
Motion to refer to the police department.
Counselor, just my question is it for action or for a response back? Would you just want them to handle the
I went to
situation?
the sponsors.
For action.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
Is there a second?
I'm not opposed to the question.
They don't have to review.
Okay. So we have a
Just a written
motion.
response. Okay.
We have a motion to refer item number 9 to the police department for action with a written response in 30 days. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number
Mr.
10.
Chairman, if I may, I'd like to
Councilman
move
DePiero.
for reconsideration on item 6, please. Are you going to say 7?
Is there a second? We have a motion for reconsideration on item number 6, a second. Clerk will read the roll.
Counsel Capone, reconsideration. Counsel De La Sola. Counselor DeFlorio. Counselor DePiero.
Yes.
Counselor Hanlon.
Yes.
Counselor Marchese.
No.
Counselor Matusky.
No.
Counselor McKinnon.
No.
Counselor McLaughlin. Counselor Simonelli.
No.
And President Napolitano.
What's the score so far?
It don't matter either way. No is the prevailing side.
No.
It is 4 yeas, 6 nays. You have not reconsidered the piece.
Again, clerk will read item number 10.
Sometimes I don't know what. Item number 10. Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Councilor Stephen Simonelli to have the Director of CHA appear at the next Government Operations, Public Safety, Public Service meeting to discuss the ways of opening up more parking spaces at Whittier Hospital.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you for Councilman Simonelli. Refer this back to GOPS, PAS Committee.
Second motion.
Okay, there's a motion to send this back to Government Ops and Public Safety, Public Service. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number 11.
Item number 11, Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Councilor Stephen Simonelli that the CFO appears at the next council meeting to explain why the city retirement funds are underfunded.
Council Simonelli.
Mr. President, through for Councilman Simonelli, invite Mr. Demus up.
We have a motion to invite the CFO before us. It's been seconded. All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Demus, for showing.
Thank you.
I'm going to just ask you several questions. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, if you could just answer them. How much are we underfunded in the retirement?
Sure. To answer that question, if I could just, rather than to answer it directly, just give you a little bit of information. I know it's late, but I think to put things into context. The city, because we have a pension fund, is required to get an actuarial report updated every 2 years. I think this is stemming from a newspaper article over the past few months. A lot of that information that was in that article was old, and some of it was erroneous. That article referred to the valuation as of 1/1/16. The information that I have in front of me, and just recently, PIRAC has just approved in the last month or so our updated actuarial report as of 1/1/18. So I'm very pleased to say that as of January 1st of 18, our unfunded actuarial liability was $107,246,256. That actually is down from January 1 of 16 by $10,046,000. We had a favorable results over the past couple of years since going back to January of 16. I think a couple of other items that were mentioned is that the city was 11th from the bottom. It actually was 14th from the bottom. We're now 32nd from the bottom. However, one of the more important things to make a note of is that the city is in the top 18 of all retirement systems as far as a funding process, funding progress. That funding progress is made available through the mayor and the city council's budget appropriations. The retirement system is anticipated to be fully funded by 2029. And at that point, we will no longer be paying back the unfunded portion of the city's actuarial liability. That includes, in this past report, the retirement board has accepted updated actuarial assumptions that actually had a negative impact on our liability. It actually increased our liability. But because the funding is so aggressive, we were able to still make significant improvements. When I say that we're 18th in the state, when you look at total retirement appropriations as a percentage of your total general fund budget, again, that was as of fiscal 17. We've continued to make great strides in funding this liability. And having some discussions and getting a little bit of historical context with the city's retirement board administrator, one of the reasons why the city was so low on that list is the city took it very hard back in 2018 during the financial crisis, like a lot of retirement systems did, but the city took it exceptionally hard. Since that time and since 2018, we went from a very low number to, in talking with the director, PIRAC considers the city of Everett one of their success stories and the actions that the mayor and city council has taken since that fall back in 2008. Again, fully funded on our current schedule in 2029. In 2028, our last payment to fund the unfunded portion is about $17 million. So Once that's actually made, and then in year 2030, you're going to see our retirement appropriation significantly drop, because not only will we be funded our current costs, we will no longer have to fund the unfunded portion that the city's been dealing with for the last 20 years.
So would the underfunding at this time affect the retirees from receiving any of their monthly checks?
This has absolutely no impact on retirees or the pensions or the benefits they receive. And I just want to make one thing clear. The liability is unfunded. The actual costs on an annual basis are 100% fully funded and beyond, which is why we've made such significant strides in getting that unfunded portion addressed.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, refer back to sponsor.
Excuse me. Item number 13, Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Council Rosa DeFlorio that the Traffic Commission look into the possibility of placing a speed bump at the intersection of Bradford Street and Kinsman Street at the request of residents in that area.
Mr. President, we've had numerous complaints. I don't know about anybody else here, but I know everybody got some emails in regards to this problem. So I would like to see if the Traffic Commission could put a speed bump. Unfortunately, when you make a street a one-way, it's wide. They're all rushing to get to the lights. It's only a short street. So they're coming from the top of Bradford Street, coming down and just going right through because they want to make the light. So the motion is referred to the Traffic Commission and with an answer to let me know when the meeting's going to be. I'd like to go speak on it and explain to them the reason why this was requested.
Second. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number 14.
Item number 14, Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Councilor Wayne A. Matusky that the city's tree arborist appear at the next council meeting to discuss the process of removing dead trees.
Councilor Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Over the last couple of years, I've received calls for dead trees that needed to be trimmed. We have a problem in the city. I did speak to Mr. Laliberti, our arborist for the city, and I did have a meeting with the mayor, informal meeting last week about trees in the city. The mayor knows there's an issue here. There's a lot of calls coming into 311, stumps, trees, the whole 9 yards. The mayor is going to come before us with a proposal to, there's too much work to be done on these trees. And part of the reason for that, I believe, I was looking at an article in the Globe just a couple of weeks ago about, I think it was East Boston, I'm pretty sure. There was a beautiful tree in front of a home, and National Grid and Comcast came, one of the, I think it was National Grid, they destroyed this. The woman had taken a picture the day before of the tree in front of the house, and National Grid come by and completely butchered it the next day. And I saw that it was so sad because this tree was a beautiful tree. Now, I don't know about any other parts of the neighborhood, but the trees on my street, on Lewis Street, you got 3 branches, right? Well, the middle thing, they just chop it and lop it off. And our city employees, and these are unsafe trees now, and it's all over the city, by the way, I believe. They butchered the trees, National Grid. The next time Mr. Cameron comes up, I'd like to discuss that with him. But this is why I think we're having a lot of problems with trees in this community, because they've been butchered. And needless to say, Mr. Laliberti's got his hands full, but I don't think that people should wait more than 6 months to get a tree removed or trimmed. That is my feeling on the issue. Because some of them are unsafe, and that's the main reason. But a small dead tree that's, I don't know what you call it, a very small tree should be removed immediately. Because the tree pot, is that what they call them, the tree pot? The
Tree bulb, the
where
the
they
roots.
sit? I mean, you got weeds growing 6 feet high around some of these dead trees, and it's a real mess. We have one on Bradford Street, they did get rid of it, one on Second Street recently. I mean, this thing looked like it come out of a horror movie. We got some serious issues. Argyle Street, there's 3 trees that need to be removed or trimmed. So we've got a serious issue with trees, and I know the mayor said he's going to do a proposal on it. And I want to thank Mr. Laliberti, the arborist, and at least I know who he is now. So with that, I'll refer this to the city services director for his actions.
Second.
Okay, actually, the item is to have the city tree arborist appear before the city council.
All right. So
What action are you
We refer
looking?
this back to sponsor, and the mayor is going to put something before us in the future. Thank you.
Second motion.
Council McLaughlin, there is a motion to refer us back to sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to let Councilor Matusky know that we actually had this in committee a month ago because I shared the same issues that you have. I've got numerous calls, as all of us do, on number of trees in Ward 6 that are dead or unsafe conditions. We were waiting for DPW to be able to come back with a compiled list. We provided a lot of locations that night at Government Operations, Public Safety. Councilor DePiero gave some locations, and so we had it in committee, and we were waiting to get information back, and I believe it's still in committee. That piece is still in committee. So I'll make sure that when that committee report is back and the information is shared, that you'll get aware of that. But this, I couldn't agree more. It's a problem that we need to address. Thank you.
You have a motion to refer item number 14 back to sponsor. And second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number 15.
Item number 15. Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Councilor Michael J. McLaughlin that a representative from Lime Bike appears at the next council meeting to discuss the placement of bikes during the winter months.
Council McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you. Our surrounding communities have done the same thing. We see these Lime Bikes all over the city. They've, from what I understand, have been a very successful program, pilot program this year. But we need to figure out what we're going to do with these bikes come wintertime. We can't leave them scattered throughout the sidewalks into the streets. Can imagine plows and so forth will have serious issues with that. So I'm not sure how these bikes are picked up or collected, what the time frame is that it happens. So I'd like to hear from somebody from Lime Bike to give us an explanation of the next step of this pilot program and where it goes. And I'd also like to gather some information, if they can, for us of what the number of trips have been this summer, and to show if it has been a successful program, if whether or not we should implement it again next summer. I believe it has, but I'd like to see some documentation. So I'd ask that somebody appear, whether it's at the next council meeting, if you wanted to send it to the committee, it's fine with me. But I think we need to understand what happens with the hundreds of bikes that are scattered throughout the streets in Everett today. Thank you.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure? I mean,
I'll
I
send
think this
it- I'll
actually
make-
belongs in public safety, public service, but
Yeah,
it's at your call.
Correct, Mr. President. Send it to Government Operations.
There's a motion to send this to Government Operations. Been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will read item number 16.
Item number 16, Mr. President, is a resolution offered by Councilor Anthony DePiero, respectively requesting Chief of Staff Kevin O'Donnell, John Taco of Encore Resorts, Boston Harbor, representatives from the Fire Department in Everett, firefighters Local 143 appear at the next Government Operations meeting to discuss concerns surrounding the resort's Fire Command Center.
Councilman DePiero.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to send this to Government Operations and Public Safety, Public Service. Been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. You have so adjourned.